Daniel sat in the principal's office, his heart pounding in his chest. A few minutes ago, he had been in class, working on his usual project, something about improving the school's outdated software system. But now, things had taken a drastic turn. He was about to be expelled. "Daniel, you've crossed a line this time," Principal Thompson said, her voice stern but not without a trace of disappointment. "You've hacked into the school system and altered grades. This isn't a simple mistake. This is serious." Daniel's mind raced. He hadn't meant for things to escalate this far. All he had wanted was for the truth to come out. The school's grading system had been a mess for years, unfair and inconsistent. But instead of getting the administration to listen, he had acted out of frustration. Now, his genius had turned into a downfall. He was a genius, after all. He had always known that. But for all the brilliance, Daniel was never able to fit in. No matter how hard he tried, school wasn't made for someone like him. He didn't see the world through the same lens as most of his classmates. And the teachers? They just didn't understand. "You can't expel me," Daniel said, his voice trembling but defiant. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was trying to fix something that needed fixing." "You may have had good intentions, Daniel," Principal Thompson said, shaking her head, "but that doesn't change the fact that you broke the rules. And there are consequences." Daniel stared at the floor, unable to say anything. He had expected something like this to happen. But hearing those words, "You're expelled," hit him like a punch to the gut. What now? Where would he go from here? As he left the principal's office, Daniel's thoughts raced. He had always been the outsider, the one who knew too much, who asked too many questions, the one who could solve problems but had no one to share his victories with. Now, he had nothing but an uncertain future ahead of him. What if this was the end of his story? What if he couldn't find a way forward? Is this the end, or is it just the beginning? Daniel wondered aloud as he walked down the hallway. Daniel had always been different. From a young age, he showed a remarkable ability to understand complex systems. While other kids were playing sports or talking about their favorite TV shows, Daniel was at home, reading books about programming, artificial intelligence, and quantum physics. His parents, both successful but somewhat distant, had always seen his intelligence as something to be nurtured. They enrolled him in the best schools, bought him all the latest tech gadgets, and pushed him to be the best in everything he did. They loved him, but they didn't always understand him. His mom would often say, "Daniel, you're going to do great things one day, but you need to focus more on the things that matter to people." But Daniel never cared much for what people thought. He was fascinated by the mechanics of the world, how things worked, and why they didn't always work as they should. At school, Daniel was a quiet, introverted kid. He had a few friends, but none of them really shared his passion for technology or his love for solving problems. The other kids didn't understand why Daniel spent so much time reading coding books and practicing math problems. Instead, they preferred to gossip, play games, or just get through the day. As a result, Daniel spent most of his time alone, working on his projects or reading. One day, during his sophomore year, Daniel discovered a glitch in the school's grading system. It was minor at first, a small error that didn't seem like a big deal. But as he dug deeper, Daniel realized it was more than just a glitch. The system was riddled with problems, corruption, favoritism, and manipulation of grades. He was horrified. This wasn't just a mistake. It was an unfair system that punished students based on who they knew, not how well they performed. But when Daniel tried to bring this issue to light, no one took him seriously. The administration dismissed his concerns, and his teachers didn't believe he understood the problem. They just saw him as a troublemaker, or a kid who was too obsessed with technology for his own good. Frustrated and feeling like he had no choice, Daniel took matters into his own hands. Using his skills, he accessed the school's database and altered the grades of several students, those who had been unfairly treated. He didn't change the grades to make them higher. He simply corrected them to reflect what the students truly deserved. When the school administration discovered what he had done, it was too late. They were angry, of course, but also strangely impressed by his skills. Unfortunately, it didn't matter. The decision was made. Daniel was expelled. Have you ever felt like an outsider in school or at work? How did you deal with it? Let us know in the comments. Daniel stared at the principal's desk, the weight of the situation sinking in. His mind felt like it was swirling in a whirlwind. One moment, he was just another student trying to make his mark, and now, here he was, on the verge of being expelled. It felt like a dream, or rather, a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Principal Thompson's office felt colder than usual. It wasn't that the room was physically cold, but it was the kind of cold that came from the harshness of an unavoidable truth. Daniel was about to lose everything he'd worked for. "You've gone too far this time, Daniel," Principal Thompson said, her voice even and firm. "You've hacked into the school system and altered grades. You've broken the rules, and there are consequences." Daniel's heart raced. He wasn't sure if he could find the right words to explain himself. He had done what he thought was necessary. The system was flawed, corrupt even, and students were suffering because of it. Some were unfairly marked down. Some were given grades they didn't deserve because of who they knew, not what they knew. Daniel's attempt to expose the flaws had turned into something more. He hadn't set out to break the law or get expelled. All he wanted was to fix things, to make sure the students who truly deserved high grades got them. What was the point of working hard if the system wasn't fair? He had spent countless nights hacking into the school's software, carefully adjusting the records, making sure everything balanced out. He didn't want to cheat anyone. He wanted justice. "I didn't do anything wrong," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "The system is broken. You don't understand. You're punishing me for trying to make things right." Principal Thompson's face hardened. "You may have had good intentions, but that doesn't change the fact that you've broken several laws. Hacking, even for a noble cause, is still illegal. You've compromised the integrity of the entire system." Daniel could feel his stomach drop. He had expected punishment, sure, but not this. Not expulsion. Expulsion meant everything he had worked for. The friends, the recognition, the possibility of college scholarships was all slipping through his fingers. And for what? Trying to do the right thing. "I just wanted to help," Daniel muttered under his breath, his hands clenching into fists on the desk. The principal didn't respond immediately. She just stared at him, her eyes not full of anger but rather a deep disappointment that hurt more than any punishment she could give. She knew Daniel's potential. She knew he wasn't a troublemaker. But what he had done was too risky, too reckless. "I'm sorry, Daniel," Principal Thompson finally said, "but there's nothing more I can do. You're expelled." The words echoed in Daniel's ears like a death sentence. Expelled. He had always prided himself on his intelligence, his ability to see solutions where others couldn't. But in this moment, all that brilliance seemed meaningless. He had wanted to change the system, but instead, the system had changed him. The weight of the decision crashed down on him as he stood up from the desk, trying to keep his composure. As he walked out of the principal's office, his thoughts were a blur. He barely noticed the other students in the hallway, some of them whispering, others staring in silence. The hallway, once familiar and comfortable, now felt like a foreign place. He had never quite fit in, but this was different. This was the final fracture, the moment when he realized he was an outsider in every sense of the word. He pushed open the school's front door, stepping outside into the crisp air. The world felt distant. It wasn't that he was upset with the school, or even the system. It was more that he had done what he thought was right, only to be punished for it. How could they not see the bigger picture? How could they not understand that he had tried to fix something broken? Daniel's steps were slow and deliberate as he made his way down the street. He had no idea where he was going. He wasn't even sure what he was feeling anymore. Anger? Frustration? Or maybe it was something deeper, something more unsettling. Fear, perhaps. Fear of failure. Fear of being lost. Fear of having no one to turn to. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. Just afternoon. His parents would be home soon, and they would want to know what had happened. He dreaded the conversation that was coming. He had always been the kid who exceeded expectations, the one who made them proud. But now, he had to face them knowing he had failed. His phone buzzed in his hand. A text from his mom. "How was your day? Everything okay?" Daniel stared at the message, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. What could he say? What was there to say? "I'm expelled." The words felt foreign as he typed them, as though they belonged to someone else. He hit send. His phone buzzed again almost immediately. What? Why? Come home. We'll talk about this. Talk about it? There was nothing to talk about. The decision had been made. The damage was done. The system had crushed him, and there was nothing left to salvage. As Daniel walked further down the street, he thought about what was next. The expulsion was only the beginning. What did his future look like now? Without a school, without a plan, without any real direction, where was he supposed to go? What could he do? The thought gnawed at him. The world outside the school gates was vast, and he felt small, so incredibly small. But then, as if on cue, a new thought crossed his mind. What if this wasn't the end? What if this was just the beginning? What if there was something more out there for him? What would you do if you were in Daniel's shoes? Would you fight to stay, or would you leave and find another way? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Daniel's life hadn't always been filled with the drama of hacking and expulsion. Before the technical genius that now defined him took center stage, he had been just a normal kid trying to fit in. A kid who had been fascinated by things most of his peers didn't even notice. A kid who saw the world in ways that seemed different, yet in ways he couldn't help but share. From a young age, Daniel's mind worked like a finely tuned machine. His parents, successful professionals in their respective fields, his father a lawyer and his mother an entrepreneur, had always seen their son as a prodigy, someone destined for greatness. They provided him with the best education, from private schools to exclusive summer camps designed for the academically gifted. They constantly pushed him to excel, offering him opportunities he never even asked for. Yet, despite their support, they never seemed to truly understand him. Daniel wasn't interested in the same things other kids were. While other boys played video games and watched sports, Daniel spent hours alone, devouring books about technology and mathematics. His favorite pastime was solving complex coding puzzles. At age 8, he built his first computer from scratch, and by the time he turned 12, he was already working on programming his own video games. To Daniel, the world of zeros and ones made more sense than the world of human interaction. But that didn't mean he didn't try to interact with others. He had friends, but their relationships were always shallow. They didn't understand his obsession with technology, and he found their conversations about school dances and weekend plans tedious. It wasn't that Daniel didn't enjoy socializing, it's just that he couldn't quite find the common ground. While he respected his peers, he didn't feel they could ever truly understand his way of thinking. It was a lonely existence. School wasn't much better. The teachers appreciated his intellect, but they couldn't relate to him. In their eyes, Daniel was an oddball, a kid who skipped the fun parts of school, who didn't buy into the traditional expectations of adolescence. When other students spoke about the latest trends, Daniel could only contribute what he had read in textbooks or online forums. His social skills were awkward at best, and this made him a target for bullies. Though the bullying was subtle, it stung nonetheless. Name-calling, eye rolls, and being passed over for group projects were constant reminders that Daniel wasn't like everyone else. But he was used to it. The world had always felt like a place that didn't fully understand him. Despite the difficulties, Daniel thrived academically. He was always at the top of his class, his mind a sponge that absorbed every new piece of information. But his grades weren't what kept him up at night. What fascinated him was how things worked, the unseen mechanics that powered the world around him. Computers, machines, systems. Whether it was the software running on his computer, the way traffic lights synchronized, or the manner in which a company's internal communication worked, Daniel's curiosity was boundless. He wanted to learn everything, and that hunger for knowledge only intensified with time. It wasn't until his sophomore year in high school that Daniel stumbled upon something that would change everything. He had always been a bit of a tinkerer, occasionally fixing the school's outdated computers or helping teachers with tech problems. But one afternoon, while attending an optional tech seminar at school, Daniel noticed something strange. The school's grading system was glitching. At first, Daniel thought it was a minor issue. Maybe the server had lagged, or the system was just overloaded with data. But when he investigated further, he discovered something far more disturbing. There was a pattern. Students who had rich or influential parents seemed to get higher grades, regardless of their actual performance. On the other hand, students from lower-income families or students who weren't as well-connected often had their grades altered, bringing them down. The discovery stunned Daniel. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The system that was supposed to reward hard work and dedication was rigged, favoring those with connections and status. This wasn't just a glitch, it was a full-on injustice. And to Daniel, the idea of a broken system was more than just a flaw. It was an affront to everything he believed in. For the next few days, Daniel spent every spare moment studying the school's grading software. His knowledge of coding allowed him to track down the issues in the system and even identify the backdoors that administrators had unknowingly left open. The more he dug, the more he realized that this problem was far more widespread than anyone could imagine. It wasn't just a few biased administrators. The corruption was built into the very fabric of the system. Grades were manipulated on a massive scale, and no one seemed to care. Daniel knew he couldn't let this go. This wasn't just about fixing a computer bug, it was about fixing a broken system. But when he tried to bring the issue to the school's attention, he was ignored. He had a meeting with the principal, Principal Thompson, and tried to explain the corruption he had uncovered, but she dismissed him, saying it was just a technical error. His teachers, who had always been impressed with his intelligence, refused to believe the magnitude of what he was saying. To them, Daniel was just another student with too much time on his hands. Frustrated and feeling as though he had no choice, Daniel decided to take matters into his own hands. He wasn't going to stand by while students were punished or rewarded based on who they knew. He knew the risks. He understood that what he was about to do could get him into serious trouble, but he couldn't turn away from the injustice. One night, after hours of coding and tweaking, Daniel successfully gained access to the school server. His plan wasn't to alter the grades indiscriminately, but rather to correct them. He fixed the records of students who had been unfairly marked down and adjusted the grades of those who had been unfairly favored. It wasn't about revenge or personal gain. It was about making the system work the way it was supposed to. But the next morning, the school noticed the changes. They immediately launched an investigation, and within hours, Daniel's name was all over the place. His hacking skills were undeniable, and though his intentions had been noble, the school couldn't see past the breach of trust. The decision was made. Daniel was expelled. As he sat there in the principal's office, waiting for the inevitable, Daniel couldn't help but think, was it worth it? Have you ever faced a situation where you had to choose between doing what was right and facing the consequences? What would you have done in Daniel's position? Let us know in the comments. Daniel walked through the front door of his house with a sense of dread hanging heavily over him. The cool air that hit his face outside seemed almost refreshing compared to the weight pressing on his chest. He had just been expelled from school, a situation he couldn't have imagined even a few weeks ago, but now here he was, standing at the threshold of what felt like the end of the world, or at least, the end of his world. His mom, Elizabeth, was sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her, her brow furrowed as she typed away at something. She glanced up as Daniel walked in, her eyes scanning his face for any sign of distress. "Hey, honey," she greeted him with a smile, but her eyes quickly narrowed when she saw the look on his face. "What happened? You get through your exams okay?" Daniel stood still for a moment, the lump in his throat making it difficult to speak. He had no idea how to explain it. How do you tell your parents, the ones who had always believed in you, that you were being expelled for trying to make a broken system right? "I got expelled," Daniel said finally, his voice sounding flat even to his own ears. Elizabeth blinked, clearly thinking she had misunderstood. "What? Expelled? Why?" Daniel took a deep breath and then told her everything. The corruption he had discovered, the way grades were manipulated, the way he had tried to fix it. He explained how the school had refused to listen to his findings, how he had been ignored, and how he had resorted to hacking into the system to correct the injustices he'd uncovered. When he finished, there was a long silence. Elizabeth put down her laptop slowly and crossed her arms over her chest, her expression unreadable. Daniel waited, anxiously, for her to say something, anything. "Daniel," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I know you meant well, but what you did was dangerous. Hacking into the school system? That's not just against the rules, it's illegal. You could have gotten in a lot of trouble. What were you thinking?" Daniel felt the sting of her words, though he knew she was right. But he couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't understand, that she didn't see how important it was to fix things. She had always told him to do the right thing, but to her, doing the right thing now meant obeying the rules, even when those rules were unjust. "I was trying to make things right," Daniel said quietly. "I couldn't just sit back and watch people get hurt. You don't understand how unfair everything is. The whole system is messed up. People like me, people who work hard, get punished for no reason. And people who don't deserve it, they get ahead just because they have money or power." Elizabeth's face softened. "I understand your frustration, Daniel. I really do. But there are ways to change the system without breaking the law. You can't just take matters into your own hands like this. What if you had gotten caught? What would have happened then?" "I didn't think it through," Daniel admitted, looking down at his shoes. I had to do something. I couldn't let it go on." "Well, now you have to deal with the consequences," Elizabeth said, her voice full of resignation. "You've burned bridges with the school, and now we need to figure out what comes next." Daniel felt the weight of her words, and for a moment, all the energy drained from his body. He had always believed that, if given the chance, he could change things. He could fix the system. But now, with nothing left, he wasn't sure how to move forward. He couldn't just sit around, waiting for his future to fall apart. He needed something, anything, to pull him out of the mess he had created. As the conversation ended, Daniel retreated to his room, closing the door behind him. The silence was overwhelming. He wasn't sure if he was more upset about losing his place at school or about letting his parents down. He had always tried to be the perfect child, the one who never broke the rules, the one who could always be counted on to do the right thing. But now, everything felt like it had slipped through his fingers. He pulled out his laptop and started aimlessly scrolling through his social media feeds, but none of it felt relevant anymore. The posts about parties, college acceptances, and the mundane lives of his classmates seemed distant, like a different world. Daniel couldn't focus on the trivial things. He needed something bigger, something that could remind him why he had tried to fix things in the first place. Suddenly, an idea popped into his head. It was crazy, but it made sense. What if he could take this chance to push his talents further? If he couldn't fix the system from the inside, maybe he could find a way to fix it from the outside. But how? And who could he turn to? That's when his mind flashed back to something he'd heard months ago, a name that had been bouncing around in tech circles for years now. Elon Musk. Elon Musk was a visionary, someone who had changed industries, someone who wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo. If anyone could understand what Daniel was going through, it was him. Musk was a billionaire entrepreneur, an inventor, a disruptor, someone who had taken risks and faced criticism for doing things others thought impossible. Maybe he was the key to Daniel's next step. Daniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard as he began searching for any contact information, trying to figure out how to reach Musk. After all, what did he have to lose? His whole future was in limbo. At this point, it seemed like the only path forward. It took a bit of digging, but Daniel eventually found an email address associated with Musk's company, SpaceX. It was a long shot, he knew, but he had nothing else to lose. He hesitated for only a moment before typing out a message. The email was simple, honest, and to the point. Subject: a message from a student who needs your help. Dear Mr. Musk, my name is Daniel Sullivan, and I am a high school student who has recently been expelled for trying to fix a flawed system. I uncovered corruption in my school's grading system, and when the administration refused to listen, I took matters into my own hands. While my intentions were to help others and create a fairer environment, I made a mistake by hacking into the system, and now I face the consequences. I'm reaching out because I believe that, like you, I have a vision to fix what's broken in the world. I need guidance, someone who can help me navigate this new path and turn my passion for technology into something positive. If you have a moment to spare, I would be honored to hear your thoughts. Sincerely, Daniel Sullivan. Daniel hit send. The uncertainty lingered, but for the first time in days, there was a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, something bigger than he had ever imagined. Have you ever taken a big risk to try to change something you thought was wrong? Do you think Daniel made the right decision reaching out to Elon Musk? Share your thoughts below. The days after Daniel sent the email were a blur of anxiety. He spent most of his time staring at his laptop, waiting for a reply that he feared would never come. What were the chances that someone like Elon Musk would actually take the time to respond to a high school student from a small town, a kid who had just been expelled for hacking a school grading system? The odds felt impossible, but Daniel couldn't help himself. His mind kept racing, imagining all the possibilities. As the hours turned into days, Daniel slowly started to lose hope. Maybe he was just dreaming too big. Maybe the email had been a mistake. What could someone like Musk possibly want with a kid like him? After all, Musk was a billionaire entrepreneur, running multi-billion-dollar companies like SpaceX and Tesla. He had his own world, far removed from the struggles of a high school dropout like Daniel. On the fifth day after sending the email, Daniel woke up to an unusual sound. His phone buzzed across the desk, and it took him a moment to realize what it was. An email notification. But not just any email. This one was from the email address he had sent his message to. Subject: Read. A message from a student who needs your help. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. His hand shook as he clicked the notification, opening the message. From Elon Musk. Subject: Read. A message from a student who needs your help. Hi Daniel. Thank you for reaching out. I can tell you're passionate about technology and making the world a better place, and that's something I respect. What you did may have been illegal, but your intentions were good, and sometimes the world needs people who are willing to break the rules for the right reasons. You've already done something many people only dream of, challenging a broken system. But you'll need to think bigger if you want to make lasting change. If you're serious about pursuing a future in tech, I have an offer for you. I think you have potential. Get in touch with me, and we can talk about how you can channel your abilities into something meaningful. Best regards, Elon Musk. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as he reread the email, over and over again. It was real. Elon Musk, the man he had admired for years, had actually responded to him. He wasn't sure if he was dreaming, or if the weight of this moment was too heavy for his brain to fully comprehend. The doubts that had plagued Daniel just days before seemed to fade away in an instant. This was his chance, his opportunity to do something that mattered. But what was he supposed to do next? How did he respond to someone like Elon Musk? His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he tried to find the right words. How do you reply to an email from a genius billionaire? A man who would change the world? But Daniel didn't have time to overthink it. He needed to act quickly, to seize the moment before the opportunity slipped away. Subject: Read. A message from a student who needs your help. Dear Mr. Musk, thank you so much for your response. I can't even begin to describe how much it means to me to hear from you. I've always believed that technology has the power to change the world, and I want to be part of that change. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to learn from them and do something meaningful with my abilities. I would be honored to talk further about how I can contribute to the kind of work you're doing. I am serious about pursuing a future in tech, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Thank you again for your time and your belief in me. Sincerely, Daniel Sullivan. After sending the email, Daniel sat back in his chair, his heart still racing. The next few minutes felt like hours, and he kept refreshing his inbox, hoping for another reply. What if he had said the wrong thing? What if Musk didn't actually mean it? His mind spiraled, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had made the first step. That was all he could control. Hours later, as the sun began to set, Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a calendar invite. From Elon Musk. Subject: Meeting invitation. Hi Daniel. I've set aside some time for us to talk. Let's meet via Zoom tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'll send you the link. Looking forward to hearing from you. Best regards, Elon Musk. It was happening. The meeting was set. Daniel could barely believe it. He felt like he was dreaming again. But this time, it was real. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Daniel spent hours preparing for the meeting, double-checking his internet connection, adjusting the lighting in his room, and rehearsing what he would say. He knew this was his big chance. There was no room for mistakes. He had to be perfect, and he had to be ready to impress someone who had accomplished more in his lifetime than most people could ever dream of. At 2:45 p.m. the next day, Daniel sat down at his desk, waiting for the Zoom meeting to begin. His heart was pounding, his palms sweaty. He kept checking his watch, making sure he wasn't late. When the moment finally came, he clicked the link, and the Zoom meeting opened. For a few seconds, the screen was empty. Then, the face of Elon Musk appeared on the screen, his familiar features unmistakable. He was dressed casually, as if this was just another day for him, but his eyes were focused and intense. "Hi, Daniel," Musk said with a friendly smile. "Thanks for reaching out. It's good to meet you." Daniel's mouth went dry, but he managed to squeak out a greeting. "Mr. Musk, thank you for your time. This means everything to me." Musk nodded. "I've read a little bit about your situation. You did something bold, but I can see that you have a strong sense of justice. Tell me, why did you reach out to me?" Daniel took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. I want to make a difference," Daniel said. "I know I messed up, but I want to take what I've learned and apply it to something bigger, something that could change the world. I think I have the skills and the passion to make a real impact, and I want to do that." Musk raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "You've got the drive. But I need to know, you're not just looking for a way to get back into school, are you?" Daniel shook his head. "No, sir. This isn't about going back to a broken system. This is about doing something that really matters. I want to build, innovate, and create. I want to make technology serve the people who need it most." Musk leaned back in his chair, nodding slowly. "I like what I'm hearing. You've got the right mindset. So here's what I propose. Let's work together on something. You've got the skills, I've got the resources. We'll figure out how to take your ideas and turn them into something real." Daniel's heart soared. He could hardly believe it, but he didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'm ready. How would you feel if someone like Elon Musk took an interest in your future? Do you think Daniel is ready for this opportunity? Let us know in the comments." The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind for Daniel. After that first Zoom call with Elon Musk, his life had been completely turned upside down. He had gone from being a high school expellee with a bleak future ahead of him to having a direct line of communication with one of the most influential entrepreneurs of the century. Musk had been direct and focused during their first meeting. He didn't waste time with small talk. He wanted results. He believed in Daniel's potential, but he also knew that ambition alone wasn't enough. There had to be a plan. There had to be action. And so, Daniel found himself diving headfirst into the world of innovation, technology, and business, under the guidance of one of the most visionary leaders of his time. The first task that Musk assigned to Daniel was a challenge that he wasn't sure he was ready for. Create a prototype of a new software solution that could help bridge the gap between education and technology. The project was ambitious. Musk didn't just want to fix the school system. He wanted to disrupt it entirely. He had always been a disruptor, a person who saw existing structures as nothing more than obstacles to progress. Daniel understood that if he was going to succeed in this new world, he would need to push the boundaries of what was possible, just like Musk had done. Daniel worked tirelessly day and night, his bedroom now resembling a makeshift tech lab. Whiteboards filled with scribbled equations, software mock-ups, and flowcharts lined the walls. His laptop became a constant companion, the hum of its fan almost like a comforting rhythm as he coded, debugged, and refined his ideas. There were moments of frustration, when bugs seemed impossible to fix or ideas felt stagnant, but Daniel refused to quit. Musk had warned him that innovation wasn't easy, that there would be setbacks and failures. But he also assured Daniel that those were the moments that would define him. Failure, Musk had said, was just a stepping stone on the path to success. Daniel's first breakthrough came one evening when he managed to integrate a real-time data analysis feature into his prototype. It was a small step, but to him, it felt monumental. The software allowed for more personalized learning experiences, adapting to each student's unique needs. It could predict struggles before they even happened and offer solutions in real time. He felt a rush of excitement as he tested the feature, watching as the data updated seamlessly on the screen. But with every small victory came the inevitable hurdles. After sending his first iteration of the software to Musk for review, Daniel anxiously awaited feedback. When it came, it wasn't as glowing as he had hoped. "This is good," Musk had written in his email, "but you're not thinking big enough. I want you to envision a system that can be scaled globally. This isn't just about fixing one school. It's about changing the way the entire world learns." Daniel felt a wave of doubt wash over him. Was he really ready for this? How could someone like him, a kid with no formal education in tech, possibly build something that would change the world? He had his ideas, his passion, but was it enough? His doubt quickly gave way to determination. He had come this far. There was no turning back now. In the days that followed, Daniel worked even harder. He spent hours reading everything he could find on education technology, AI, machine learning, and data science. He reached out to experts online, asked questions, and experimented with new techniques. The ideas that Musk had pushed him to explore began to take shape in ways he hadn't expected. Musk checked in regularly, offering occasional advice or a challenge. But he was also giving Daniel the freedom to make mistakes, to learn on his own. It was clear that Musk believed in his ability to figure things out, even when the road seemed uncertain. That trust made all the difference. One afternoon, after weeks of trial and error, Daniel finally cracked the code for a new system that integrated AI-driven learning pathways with an adaptive feedback mechanism. It was like a teacher who could understand each student's strengths and weaknesses, tailoring the lessons to help them improve at their own pace. He called it EduPath, a name that felt fitting for a system that would guide students on their educational journey, just as Musk had guided him through this wild new chapter of his life. When Daniel sent the final version of the prototype to Musk, he held his breath as he waited for a response. This was the moment that would determine if all his hard work had paid off, or if he was still far from the mark. Musk's reply came quickly. Subject: EduPath Prototype Review. Daniel, I'm impressed. This is the kind of thinking we need. EduPath has the potential to change the way people approach education. You've got a solid foundation here, but we still have a lot of work ahead of us to scale it for global use. I think you're ready for the next step. Let's take this to the next level. We'll start by bringing in a team of experts to refine the software and help you optimize the infrastructure. I'm looking forward to seeing where you take this. You're on the right track. Elon. Daniel let out a sigh of relief, his heart swelling with pride. The validation from Musk meant everything to him. This was more than just a project. It was a chance to change the future of education, to do something that mattered on a global scale. But with that recognition came a new wave of responsibility. Daniel now understood the full scope of the challenge ahead. It wasn't just about creating a software tool. It was about creating something that would impact millions, maybe even billions, of students around the world. It was an intimidating thought, but also exhilarating. This was the kind of work he had always dreamed of doing, making a difference through technology. As he sat back in his chair, staring at the glowing screen, Daniel realized something important. He wasn't just building a product, he was building a future. His future. The next few months were a blur of meetings, planning, and development. Musk had connected Daniel with some of the brightest minds in the tech world: engineers, designers, data scientists, people who shared his passion for education and innovation. Together, they worked to refine EduPath, adding new features, improving the AI, and expanding its capabilities. Daniel's role had shifted. He wasn't just the developer anymore. He was the visionary, the person who could see the bigger picture. His ideas were starting to take shape in ways that felt almost too grand to comprehend. He was on the precipice of something that could change everything. And yet, despite the excitement and progress, Daniel knew one thing for sure. His journey was only just beginning. Have you ever felt the pressure of a big opportunity like Daniel? How did you handle the responsibility that came with it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Months of development had passed since Daniel first began working with Elon Musk. EduPath had evolved from a simple concept to a sophisticated platform, and it was nearly ready for its first real-world test. The team had made significant strides, refining the software, optimizing its artificial intelligence, and ensuring that the platform could handle the demands of a global audience. Now it was time to take EduPath beyond the walls of their private testing environment and into the hands of actual students. The decision was made. EduPath would be launched in a select group of schools for a pilot program. These schools, a mix of public and private institutions from various parts of the country, would serve as the test subjects for the new educational tool. The hope was that their feedback would provide invaluable insights, allowing the team to fine-tune the system before a broader rollout. Daniel had been in touch with the schools for weeks, providing them with resources, training sessions, and support to ensure a smooth launch. Now, as the launch date loomed, he was filled with a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. This was the moment that would determine whether all their hard work would pay off, or whether EduPath would fail to meet the lofty expectations they had set. On the morning of the launch, Daniel sat in front of his computer, watching the live feed of the EduPath platform going live in classrooms across the country. He could feel his heart beating faster as the numbers of students logging in increased. The system was running smoothly, but there were still a million unknowns. Would the platform perform well under pressure? Would students actually engage with the system? Would EduPath truly make a difference in their learning? The first few hours went by without incident. Teachers and students seemed to adapt quickly to the interface, and initial feedback was overwhelmingly positive. The AI-powered personalized learning pathways were working as intended, adapting to each student's progress and offering tailored suggestions. Students were able to engage with lessons at their own pace, and the system's real-time data analysis allowed teachers to track their progress and intervene when necessary. But then, as the day wore on, things began to get more complicated. The first major glitch occurred when a group of students in a middle school in Chicago experienced an unexpected system crash during a math lesson. The screen froze, and students were unable to access their learning materials. Daniel's phone buzzed with the alert. It was a panic-inducing moment. The last thing they needed was a system failure on launch day. He immediately called up the team. They dug into the code, checking for any bugs or glitches. It took a few hours, but they eventually traced the issue to a server overload caused by an unexpected surge in traffic. The platform had been designed to scale, but they hadn't anticipated the sheer volume of users during the initial phase. While Daniel was grateful for the quick resolution, the incident left him shaken. The pressure of this pilot launch was immense. There were so many moving parts, and each decision had consequences. His phone pinged again, this time with an email from Elon Musk. From Elon Musk. Subject: First test of EduPath. Daniel, I know today has been intense, and I know there have been some bumps along the way. But remember, setbacks like this are part of the journey. What matters is how you respond. You've got a team that's dedicated to fixing these issues quickly, and you're learning every step of the way. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture. This platform has the potential to change the world, but only if you remain focused on the mission. Keep your head in the game. Elon. The words resonated deeply with Daniel. Musk was right. Setbacks were inevitable, but the key was to remain focused on the bigger mission, to change the way the world approached education. That was why he had worked so hard on this project. That was why he had fought through every obstacle. As the day continued, there were more bumps. Some schools experienced slow loading times. Others had difficulty navigating the platform. But Daniel and his team worked tirelessly to resolve each issue as it arose. They were learning, improving, and adapting, just like the students who would eventually use EduPath. By the end of the day, Daniel was exhausted. His eyes were red from staring at the screen for hours, his mind spinning with the day's challenges. But there was a sense of accomplishment, too. Despite the technical glitches, EduPath had made it through its first day. The feedback from teachers and students was overwhelmingly positive, and they had collected a wealth of data to help improve the system moving forward. Later that evening, Daniel received another email from Elon. From Elon Musk. Subject: Keep going. Hey Daniel, I know you've been working nonstop today, and I want to remind you of something important. You've made it. Today was a success, even with the hiccups. You built something that's already helping people, and that's more than most people can say. Tomorrow, we take the lessons from today and use them to make EduPath even better. We're just getting started. Elon. Daniel read the email and felt a surge of pride. The validation from Musk meant everything. He had worked alongside some of the best minds in tech, and now, he had created something that could truly make a difference. As he lay in bed that night, Daniel reflected on how far he had come. Just a few months ago, he had been a high school dropout, expelled from his school for hacking into the grading system. Now, he was at the helm of a project that could revolutionize education for students around the world. But the road ahead was still long. The pilot test had been just the beginning. There were still countless challenges to overcome: scaling the platform, perfecting the AI, ensuring that every student could benefit from EduPath. But Daniel was ready. He had a team of experts behind him, and more importantly, he had a vision. He knew that his work wasn't just about solving problems. It was about creating solutions that could impact generations to come. Have you ever experienced a setback that led to a bigger breakthrough? How did you overcome it? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. After the initial bumps in the road, Daniel couldn't afford to rest on his laurels. The pilot test had been a success in some ways, but there were still glaring issues that needed to be addressed, and the clock was ticking. Elon Musk had made it clear. EduPath wasn't just a platform for a handful of students. It had the potential to disrupt education on a global scale. But to do that, they needed to solve the problems that had surfaced during the test and ensure that EduPath was truly ready for prime time. The weeks following the pilot were a blur of activity. Daniel's days were consumed by meetings with the team, trying to iron out the bugs, improve the system's scalability, and adapt the platform to work with various school systems. Feedback was pouring in from teachers, students, and administrators. Some of it was encouraging. Students loved the personalized learning experiences, and many teachers were excited by how easy it was to track progress. But there was also constructive criticism, issues with speed, platform accessibility, and occasional glitches that disrupted lessons. But perhaps the biggest challenge was scaling. EduPath was initially designed with a small group of users in mind, but now it had to support thousands of students across different schools and regions. It was a monumental task. Daniel found himself pulling all-nighters, sitting with the tech team, working out ways to optimize the software and ensure that it could handle the growing number of users. The pressure was intense. In one of their many team meetings, a senior developer, Sarah, looked at Daniel with concern. "We're seeing some serious issues with the database. It's handling data inconsistencies, and the system can't keep up with the real-time updates. It's going to need a complete overhaul if we want to scale this properly." Daniel nodded, rubbing his temples. "How long would that take?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "If we don't completely restructure the database, it could take weeks. If we do, we're looking at a month at least to get everything in shape." Daniel's heart sank. A month felt like an eternity. He had always been able to solve problems quickly. Being resourceful was one of his strengths, but this was different. The pressure of delivering a fully functional, scalable platform was starting to take its toll. He knew that if they didn't get the system stable soon, they risked losing the momentum they had gained, not just from the schools, but from Elon Musk as well. That evening, as he sat at his desk trying to sort through the mess of code and feedback, Daniel received another email. It was from Musk. From Elon Musk. Subject: Keep moving forward. Daniel, I've been following your progress, and I know things are getting tough. Scaling a platform like EduPath is never easy, but I believe in you and your team. Don't lose sight of the mission. Education is one of the most important sectors to disrupt, and the work you're doing has the potential to change the world. But you need to be strategic. Focus on solving the critical issues first. Fix the database, stabilize the core features, and then iterate. The road ahead may seem long, but this is how change happens, one challenge at a time. Elon. Daniel sat back in his chair after reading the email. There it was again, the unwavering belief Musk had in him. It gave him the push he needed to keep going. The road ahead was long, but it wasn't impossible. It had never been about a single moment of success. It was about the journey, the constant iteration, and improvement. The next few days were a whirlwind of coding, debugging, and testing. Daniel and Sarah worked around the clock, pouring through the code line by line. They restructured the database, re-engineered key features, and tested the platform in multiple environments to ensure scalability. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt, but they were making progress. Then, a breakthrough came late one night. Sarah had managed to solve a critical issue with the database. The real-time data inconsistencies were resolved, and the system now handled multiple users without crashing. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a huge step forward. "I think we've got it," Sarah said, staring at the screen, her voice filled with exhaustion but also a glimmer of hope. "It's not flawless, but it's stable." Daniel smiled, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. "Let's push it to the next phase. We can tweak the details later." The following week, the platform was ready for a second round of testing. This time, Daniel was confident that EduPath could handle the demands placed on it. But he knew that the real test was still ahead, the public launch. The pilot had been a trial run, but this would be the real deal. The stakes were higher now, and the pressure was mounting. As the date for the public launch approached, Daniel found himself overwhelmed by a combination of excitement and fear. What if there were more issues? What if the platform failed on a larger scale? The thought gnawed at him, but he reminded himself that he had come too far to give up now. A few days before the public launch, Elon called Daniel directly. Daniel, Elon's voice was calm, yet his words carried weight. I know this has been a tough journey, but you're on the cusp of something extraordinary. Don't worry about the small problems. Focus on the big picture. You're changing education. That's what matters. It was the reassurance Daniel needed. As the call ended, he felt more prepared than ever. The work wasn't over yet, but with the team by his side and the lessons he had learned along the way, he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The night before the launch, Daniel couldn't sleep. He stayed up late, going over the final details of the presentation and preparing for the inevitable media attention that would follow. It was the culmination of everything he had worked for, the chance to prove that his vision for the future of education could come to life. Have you ever faced a seemingly insurmountable challenge in your life or work? How did you push through and keep going? Share your experience with us in the comments. The morning of the public launch arrived with a quiet intensity. Daniel sat at his desk, staring at the countdown timer on his computer screen. His fingers tapped nervously on the desk as he watched the seconds tick by. This was the moment they had been working toward for months. EduPath would finally be available to the world. He had to admit, the pressure was intense. The success or failure of this platform could shape the future of education, and Daniel knew that there were millions of eyes on him. In the days leading up to the launch, the media buzz had been growing. EduPath had been featured in several tech blogs, and there had been whispers about the next big thing in education. Daniel's heart raced at the thought of the entire world now knowing about the platform. It was exhilarating, but also terrifying. What if something went wrong? What if the bugs they had worked so hard to fix reappeared? What if the platform crashed under the weight of global traffic? Elon Musk had reassured him, but doubts lingered in the back of Daniel's mind. His phone buzzed with a message from Elon. From Elon Musk. Subject: It's time. Daniel, this is your moment. You've put in the work, and now it's time to deliver. Don't let the pressure get to you. This is just the beginning. Remember, nothing worthwhile is ever easy. You've already shown what you're capable of. Now, show the world what EduPath can do. Elon. Daniel read the message several times, each time feeling a little more confident. Elon's belief in him and his team was unwavering, and it fueled Daniel's determination. He knew that the platform had the potential to change education, but more importantly, he knew that he was doing it for the right reasons, to help students unlock their full potential. As the launch hour approached, Daniel was joined by Sarah, the tech lead, and a few key members of the EduPath team. They gathered in the conference room, silently watching the final preparations unfold. The excitement in the room was palpable, but so was the tension. The team had worked tirelessly, and they were ready. Now, all that remained was to hit the button that would make EduPath available to the public. The countdown hit 0. The launch was official. Immediately, the website traffic spiked. EduPath's servers began handling thousands of simultaneous logins, as students, teachers, and parents all flooded the platform to see what it was all about. The team watched the metrics carefully, monitoring for any signs of server issues or glitches. For a moment, the numbers were a blur as the real-time data poured in. Then came the first crash. It wasn't a catastrophic failure, but it was enough to send Daniel's heart racing. A surge in traffic had caused the servers to slow down significantly. Students were reporting delays in logging in, and the platform was struggling to load at times. The team scrambled to address the issue, with Sarah leading the charge to redistribute the traffic load and optimize the servers. Are we going to be able to fix this before it becomes a major problem? Daniel asked, his voice tight. We're on it, Sarah replied, her fingers flying over the keyboard. It's a temporary issue, but we should be back up to full speed in about 30 minutes. Daniel paced the room, trying to keep his nerves in check. They had planned for this moment, and he knew that it was just a matter of stabilizing the platform. But the weight of the moment was pressing on him. He needed to prove that EduPath was more than just a great idea. It had to work in the real world, under real-world conditions. Minutes passed. The server load was balancing out, and slowly, EduPath began to stabilize. By the time the 30 minutes had passed, the platform was back up and running smoothly. Daniel exhaled deeply, his chest tight with relief. "Okay," Daniel said, turning to the team. "Now we monitor and improve. We're going to be fine." The rest of the day was a blur of activity. The servers were stable, but the team kept a constant watch. Feedback continued to pour in from students and teachers. Some of it was positive, highlighting how well the AI adapted to students' learning styles. Teachers appreciated the real-time data, which helped them track progress and offer personalized support. But there were still issues to address: accessibility for students with disabilities, a few minor bugs, and the general user interface that could be made more intuitive. By the end of the day, EduPath had millions of users. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, but it was clear that the journey was just beginning. Daniel and his team would need to continue improving the platform, addressing the issues that arose, and scaling the system to meet the ever-growing demand. Late that night, as the team finally began to wind down, Daniel sat alone in his office. The weight of the day's events settled on him. He had made it through the launch, but the real work was just beginning. He had created something that had the potential to change the educational landscape. But there was still so much more to be done. His phone buzzed with a new message. From Elon Musk. Subject: "Well done, Daniel. I'm proud of you. EduPath is off to a strong start. It's going to change the way people think about education. You've got an incredible team, and you've built something that's going to make a difference. Now, keep going. The world is watching, and the real work starts tomorrow. You're changing education. Don't forget that. Elon." Daniel smiled to himself. There it was again, the reassurance that he was on the right path. The pressure wasn't over, but with Elon's words ringing in his ears, he knew that EduPath had the potential to do exactly what he had set out to do: revolutionize education. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new obstacles to overcome. But for now, Daniel allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The public launch had been a success. They had taken the first step toward changing the world. What would you change about the current education system? Do you think technology like EduPath could help make a difference? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. In the weeks following EduPath's public launch, Daniel found himself caught in a whirlwind of media attention and growing expectations. The platform had taken off faster than he could have imagined, and as the traffic soared, so did the scrutiny. News outlets, tech blogs, and even educators across the world were buzzing about EduPath. Some praised it as the future of education, while others questioned its long-term viability. There was no shortage of praise, but there were just as many critics. And with that, the pressure to continue delivering perfection mounted every day. Daniel wasn't used to being in the spotlight. Sure, he had built something revolutionary, but the fame and attention were new and unsettling. Every interview seemed to focus on what came next. What would EduPath look like in 5 years? How would it handle millions of users? And the most pressing question: could it be integrated into existing school systems without chaos? There were meetings with investors, school boards, and tech experts, each one pushing for more. More features, more customization, more data, more. And while Daniel had always thrived on challenges, it was beginning to feel like the expectations were spiraling out of control. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of back-to-back meetings, Daniel sat in his office, staring at the wall. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Elon Musk. From Elon Musk. Subject: "Stay focused. Daniel, I know things are getting overwhelming. Everyone wants more, faster. But remember, you don't need to rush this. You've built something groundbreaking, and it's going to change the world, one step at a time. Don't let the noise distract you. Focus on the mission, improve education, make it accessible, and help students unlock their potential. That's why EduPath exists." Elon. Daniel sighed and leaned back in his chair. Elon's words always had a way of cutting through the noise. There was comfort in the knowledge that someone like Musk believed in him and his team. But even with that reassurance, Daniel couldn't shake the mounting anxiety. The burden of responsibility felt heavier each day. It wasn't just about creating a successful product anymore. It was about changing a whole industry, and the stakes had never been higher. The next morning, Daniel met with his team to discuss the feedback they'd been receiving from users. While the platform was functioning well overall, there were several areas that needed attention. Accessibility for students with learning disabilities was still a major issue. The system was also running into performance problems during peak usage times. And then there were the emotional tolls, the comments and concerns from parents and teachers about the shift in teaching methods. "I think we need to focus on the human element more," Sarah, the tech lead, said. "It's clear that people are excited about EduPath's potential, but we're hearing a lot of concern about how it's going to change the relationship between teachers and students." Daniel nodded, recognizing the concern. "We need to make sure that while the platform is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, it doesn't replace the human connection. Teachers are the heart of education, not just the technology." The team spent the next few days refining the platform's user interface and incorporating more options for teacher-student interaction. They also rolled out updates aimed at improving performance during peak times, though Daniel knew that these were just temporary fixes. EduPath needed to be scalable, and that was going to require more infrastructure. As they worked on the updates, Daniel couldn't help but reflect on what had changed in his own life. When he first started building EduPath, it was just about solving a problem, creating a tool that could help students. But now it was more than that. He was a CEO of a startup that was rapidly expanding. His decisions had global consequences. He had a team relying on him, investors watching his every move, and a vision to fulfill that seemed almost impossible at times. One night, as Daniel walked through the office, he overheard two of the engineers discussing a bug they had encountered in the code. The conversation was casual, but Daniel could hear the frustration in their voices. As he stopped to listen, one of them muttered, "I don't think we're ready for this. There's too much pressure." The comment lingered in his mind long after he left the office that evening. Was it true? Was the pressure too much for EduPath? Was he asking too much of his team? He had spent so many sleepless nights pushing for excellence that he hadn't noticed how drained everyone had become. The next morning, Daniel called a team meeting. He had an idea, something that he hoped would take the pressure off the team and refocus their efforts on what really mattered: improving the product without burning out. "We're in this together," Daniel said as he looked around the room at his team. "I know things have been intense, and I can feel the weight of it too. But we're doing something extraordinary. So let's take a step back. Let's refocus on the core of what EduPath is about. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. And we're moving in the right direction." The team was quiet for a moment, and then Sarah, ever the pragmatist, spoke up. "We're all in this. But we have to pace ourselves. We can't be at 110% every single day." Daniel smiled, relieved. It was a simple but important realization. They had to take care of themselves and each other. No product was worth burning out over. It was a lesson that he had learned the hard way, and one he hoped the whole team would internalize. The following weeks were marked by a shift in focus. While the team continued to address the technical issues and improve EduPath's performance, Daniel made a conscious effort to engage with the team more deeply. He spent less time in front of his computer, buried in code and analytics, and more time listening to the team's concerns and ideas. There were daily check-ins to ensure no one felt overwhelmed, and Daniel made it clear that failure was not the end. It was a part of the process. And as the pressure eased, the results started to show. With each iteration of EduPath, the platform became more intuitive, more accessible, and more aligned with its original mission: to help students, not just teach them. Have you ever felt the weight of high expectations or pressure to succeed? How do you manage stress and stay focused on the big picture? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. As EduPath continued to grow in popularity, it was becoming clear that the platform was attracting attention from all corners, both positive and negative. For every success story of a student finding their passion or a teacher praising the real-time data, there was an equal amount of criticism. The educational world wasn't quick to embrace change, and many were skeptical of how EduPath would impact traditional teaching methods. Daniel had anticipated some pushback, but the intensity of the criticism caught him off guard. Letters from teachers and administrators poured in, some expressing concerns about data privacy, while others questioned whether a digital platform could truly replace the valuable human connection in the classroom. News outlets, too, began raising questions. Was EduPath merely a fad, or was it the future of education? One article, in particular, stood out. A prominent tech critic had written an op-ed titled EduPath: The Dangers of Relying Too Much on AI in Education. The article dissected the platform, highlighting concerns about algorithmic biases, overdependence on technology, and the potential for students to become disengaged from real-world interactions. The article ended with a warning. If we're not careful, EduPath could become the very thing it seeks to fix, a tool that further isolates students and diminishes the role of teachers in the classroom. Daniel couldn't help but feel the sting of the critique. It wasn't just a critique of the platform. It was a critique of his vision. He had built EduPath with the belief that technology could be a powerful force for good in education, but now he was facing the realization that the world wasn't as ready for this change as he had hoped. That evening, as he scrolled through the comments on social media and read more critiques, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Elon Musk. From Elon Musk. Subject: Keep your head up, Daniel. I saw the article. Look, criticism comes with the territory. People are afraid of change, especially in something as important as education. But what you've built is groundbreaking. Keep your focus on the students. Don't let a few critics cloud your vision. You know why I believe in you? Because you're doing this for the right reasons. Keep pushing, and don't get discouraged by those who are slow to adapt. Change is hard, but that's what makes it worth doing. Elon. Reading Elon's message gave Daniel a much-needed boost. It was true. Change was difficult. People didn't always embrace it, and some critics would never come around. But that didn't mean EduPath was without merit. It was still in its early stages, and it was still evolving. What mattered most was that EduPath was improving education for students who otherwise might not have had the support they needed. The next morning, Daniel decided to face the criticism head-on. Instead of hiding from the backlash, he reached out to several prominent educators and influencers in the space, asking for a sit-down conversation. He knew it was crucial to understand their concerns and, more importantly, to show that he was committed to working with them, not against them. He started with a meeting with one of EduPath's harshest critics, Karen Thompson, a high school teacher and outspoken advocate for traditional education methods. She had publicly questioned the idea of AI-driven education, arguing that it would dehumanize learning and leave teachers obsolete. The meeting was tense at first. Karen was clearly skeptical of Daniel's motives, and she didn't mince words. "You think a machine can replace what I do in my classroom?" she asked, her arms crossed. "You think you can just plug students into your platform and expect them to learn? This isn't a video game. This is real life." Daniel remained calm. He had heard these concerns before, but he knew that he had to address them head-on if he wanted to win her over. "No," Daniel replied. "EduPath isn't meant to replace teachers. It's meant to complement them. Our goal is to give teachers more tools to help students succeed. Teachers are still the most important part of the equation. We just want to support them in a way that makes their jobs easier, not harder." Karen raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued, but still skeptical. "And how do you plan to make sure that your AI doesn't oversimplify or make assumptions about students' abilities?" "That's something we're constantly working on," Daniel said. "The AI is designed to adapt to individual students' needs, but it's not perfect. We work closely with educators like you to make sure we're constantly refining it and addressing any issues that arise." Over the course of the conversation, Karen's tone softened. By the end of the meeting, she was still skeptical, but she appreciated that Daniel was willing to listen and engage in a real discussion. She even admitted that EduPath had potential, as long as it was used in conjunction with strong, personalized teaching. Daniel left the meeting feeling encouraged. The conversation with Karen wasn't a total victory, but it was a step in the right direction. He knew that winning over critics wouldn't be easy, but it was possible. As the weeks went on, Daniel continued to engage with critics and skeptics, taking their feedback seriously and working to improve the platform. He also made sure to highlight the positive stories coming out of EduPath, students who had found new confidence in their learning, teachers who had become more effective with the help of the platform, and parents who had seen their children succeed in ways they hadn't thought possible. EduPath wasn't without its flaws, but Daniel believed in its potential. More than that, he believed that it was part of a larger movement, a movement to reshape the future of education and make it more accessible for everyone, no matter their background or circumstances. Do you think technology can truly improve education? Or are we losing something important when we rely too heavily on AI? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Despite the mounting pressure and criticism, Daniel's resolve to change the educational landscape never wavered. EduPath was growing, but so were the challenges. As the platform gained more users, the technical issues began to accumulate. Scalability problems arose. Teachers requested more customization features. Parents wanted better monitoring tools. And the media was relentless, questioning whether a system designed by a teenager could truly revolutionize education. But Daniel had come to understand that true innovation doesn't come without its hurdles. Instead of retreating, he leaned into the challenges, ready to face them head-on. He knew that to make EduPath work, he needed more than just a smart platform. He needed a team that could handle the evolving demands of an ever-changing world of education. One night, after a particularly exhausting day, Daniel sat alone in his office, sipping on a cup of coffee. His mind was a whirlpool of thoughts, technical updates, media critiques, user feedback, and yet, through the chaos, one thought persisted. How could EduPath truly make a difference? The answer came to him in a flash. The next morning, Daniel called a team meeting. It was time to refocus. He had spent so long trying to please every critic and fix every problem, but what had become increasingly clear was that EduPath needed a more profound shift. It couldn't just be about optimizing algorithms and adding features. It had to be about crafting an experience that resonated with both the students and the educators at its core. "We've been approaching this all wrong," Daniel began, his voice steady but passionate. "We've been treating EduPath like a product to be sold, but it's not. It's a tool to improve lives. And it's time we focused on the people who matter most, the students and the teachers." The team looked at him with curiosity. Sarah, the lead developer, was the first to speak up. "What do you mean exactly?" she asked. "I mean," Daniel continued, "we need to rethink our approach. Instead of constantly adding more features to impress users, let's focus on making EduPath the most supportive and intuitive platform for both students and teachers. We need to make it a place where teachers feel empowered to teach, where students can learn at their own pace, and where we can facilitate connections that go beyond just the technology." The room fell silent. For a moment, no one said anything, and Daniel wondered if he had lost them. But then, slowly, one by one, the team members began to nod. "Let's start with the teachers," said Sarah. "We need to create more tools that help them build deeper connections with students. And we should provide a space where they can collaborate and share best practices with each other." "Yes," Daniel agreed. "And we need to make the platform even more personalized for the students. We've done a good job so far, but now it's about creating experiences that speak to their individual learning styles. EduPath should be their guide, not just a tool." As the conversation continued, it became clear that this was the turning point EduPath had been waiting for. Instead of trying to please everyone, the team decided to focus on what truly mattered, creating an environment where students and teachers could thrive together. The next few months were a blur of development, brainstorming sessions, and late nights. Daniel worked side by side with his team, iterating on new features, implementing feedback from teachers, and refining the platform. They focused on building better communication channels, more interactive content, and deeper insights into students' progress. They also doubled down on EduPath's core values: accessibility, inclusivity, and flexibility. And then, just as the new version of EduPath was set to launch, Daniel received another unexpected message. It was from Elon Musk. From Elon Musk. Subject: Keep moving forward. "Daniel, I've been following the progress of EduPath, and I can see the changes you're making. You're on the right track. The feedback you've been getting is crucial. Stay focused on the mission, improving education. And remember, the best way to predict the future is to create it." Elon. Elon's message was exactly what Daniel needed to hear at that moment. It reminded him that the journey wasn't about appeasing critics or chasing every new feature. It was about staying true to EduPath's original mission, to make education more accessible, more engaging, and more personalized for every student everywhere. The next day, EduPath relaunched with a new user interface, a host of new features aimed at both students and teachers, and a renewed focus on personalized learning experiences. The platform now included a better dashboard for teachers to track individual student progress, an expanded library of interactive learning resources, and more opportunities for students to communicate with their peers. Within days of the relaunch, the feedback started rolling in. Parents, teachers, and students were thrilled with the improvements. Teachers especially appreciated the new tools that allowed them to better support their students, and students responded well to the more interactive, user-friendly design. EduPath was no longer just a platform. It was becoming a community of educators and learners working together to create better educational outcomes. But just as things began to settle, Daniel received an invitation to an important conference, a conference that would change the trajectory of EduPath forever. It was an exclusive tech conference where top innovators in education and technology came together to discuss the future of learning. Among the speakers was a man Daniel had admired for years, Jeff Bezos. The invitation was clear. This was an opportunity for EduPath to gain national recognition. Have you ever had to pivot your approach to something in your life? What was the turning point for you, and how did it change your perspective? Let us know in the comments. The invitation to the prestigious tech conference felt like a moment of validation for Daniel and his team. They had been working tirelessly for months to improve EduPath, and now they had the chance to showcase it on a global stage. The conference was a major event in the world of education and technology, attracting leaders from all corners of the industry, including educators, tech innovators, investors, and even government officials. This was the kind of exposure that could make or break a company, and Daniel knew that EduPath's future depended on making the most of this opportunity. The days leading up to the conference were a whirlwind of preparations. Daniel and his team worked late into the night refining their presentation, practicing their pitches, and ensuring that everything was ready for the big day. There was a nervous energy in the air, but also a sense of excitement. They were ready to show the world what EduPath was capable of. As the day of the conference arrived, Daniel felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. He had always been confident in EduPath, but presenting it to an audience of such influential people was a different level of pressure. He arrived early to the venue, accompanied by Sarah, Mike, and a few key members of the team. The conference center was massive, filled with sleek, modern displays and tech companies showcasing their latest innovations. The atmosphere was buzzing with energy, and Daniel couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed by the scale of it all. Before their session, Daniel made a quick stop to the networking area, where he spotted a familiar face. It was Jeff Bezos, casually sipping coffee and chatting with a group of tech entrepreneurs. Daniel had admired Bezos for years, and the thought of meeting him in person made his heart race. After a brief moment of hesitation, Daniel walked over. "Mr. Bezos, I'm Daniel Kim, founder of EduPath," he introduced himself, trying to keep his voice steady. Bezos turned to him with a smile. "EduPath, huh? I've heard of it. I'm excited to see what you've built." The conversation that followed was brief but impactful. Daniel explained the mission behind EduPath, and Bezos nodded thoughtfully. "I'm a big believer in using technology to solve real-world problems," he said. "Education is one of the most important. Keep pushing forward." With that, Bezos turned back to his conversation, leaving Daniel with a renewed sense of determination. That brief interaction had been a moment of recognition from someone he admired, and it gave him the confidence he needed for the presentation ahead. When it was finally time for their session, Daniel and the team took the stage. The room was packed with attendees, and the atmosphere was electric. The screens behind them lit up with the EduPath logo, and the presentation began. Daniel started by outlining the challenges facing education today: inequality in access, outdated teaching methods, and the increasing pressure on teachers to meet the needs of diverse learners. He spoke about his personal experience as a young student, feeling isolated and unsupported in a traditional classroom. EduPath was born out of a desire to give every student the chance to succeed, no matter their background, he said. Then, Daniel dove into the features of EduPath, showing how the platform used data-driven insights to personalize learning for students and how it provided teachers with the tools they needed to track progress and tailor their lessons. He demonstrated how the platform fostered collaboration, not just between students, but between educators, creating a network of shared knowledge and best practices. As Daniel spoke, he could see the audience's reactions. Heads nodded. Some attendees took notes. Others looked at each other, whispering excitedly. It was clear that EduPath was resonating with them. When Daniel finished, the room erupted into applause. The questions that followed were insightful and challenging. A panel of experts asked about EduPath's long-term vision, its potential to scale, and how it could ensure privacy and security for students. Daniel answered each question confidently, emphasizing the platform's adaptability and the team's commitment to ethical practices. The Q&A session lasted longer than expected, but Daniel was pleased with the engagement and the thoughtful feedback they received. As the presentation concluded, Daniel and his team walked off the stage, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. They had done it. EduPath had successfully captured the attention of some of the most influential people in the tech and education industries. Afterward, Daniel was approached by a few potential investors, including a prominent venture capital firm interested in supporting the next phase of EduPath's growth. "We're really impressed with what you've done so far," one of them said. "We'd like to talk about how we can help you scale this platform and take it to the next level." It was an exciting prospect, but Daniel was careful not to get ahead of himself. While investment could help EduPath grow, he didn't want to lose sight of the platform's core mission. It was crucial to maintain the integrity of EduPath's purpose and values, even as it expanded. Later that evening, Daniel found himself at the conference's closing reception. The atmosphere was more relaxed now, with attendees mingling, networking, and enjoying drinks. He spotted a familiar face in the crowd, Elon Musk, who had also attended the conference. Elon spotted him and made his way over with a grin. "Well, Daniel," he said, extending a hand, "I've heard great things. Looks like you've really made a name for yourself today." Daniel laughed nervously. "I don't know about that, but it went well. Thanks for the support. It meant a lot to hear from you earlier." Elon's smile widened. "You've got something special here. Keep going. The future of education is in your hands." As the night wore on, Daniel felt a deep sense of pride. He had come a long way from the days when EduPath was just an idea in his head. The journey had been full of challenges, but with each obstacle, he had grown stronger, more focused on the mission. Now, as he stood at the forefront of the next phase of EduPath's journey, he knew that the road ahead would still be difficult. But with the support of his team, mentors like Elon and Jeff, and the growing community of users who believed in the platform, Daniel felt ready to take on whatever came next. Have you ever had a moment where you realized that your hard work was finally paying off? How did it feel to be recognized for something you worked so hard on? Share your experience with us in the comments. The weeks following the conference were a whirlwind. Daniel and his team had garnered significant attention, both from investors and educators. They were inundated with requests from schools, districts, and private institutions eager to implement EduPath in their classrooms. The excitement surrounding the platform was palpable, and yet, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that there was still so much more to be done. Despite the outward success, the internal pressure was mounting. The team had to deliver on their promises. The platform had to scale to meet the growing demand, and they had to implement the feedback they had received to make sure EduPath could truly revolutionize the educational experience for students and teachers alike. But amidst the frenzy, Daniel had an epiphany. He realized that in all their focus on technical improvements and features, they had been neglecting one key factor: how EduPath could evolve with its users. The platform had been designed to personalize learning, but it wasn't truly evolving alongside students. It needed to have the ability to adapt to a student's growth over time, offering challenges that stretched them while supporting their progress. Daniel huddled with his core team to discuss the new direction he had in mind. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice calm but full of conviction. "We've created a platform that's good, but it's not enough. It's time to make EduPath not just adaptive, but transformative." Sarah, Mike, and the rest of the team leaned in. sensing that Daniel had come to a new, game-changing realization. "What do you mean by transformative?" Sarah asked, already anticipating the next big leap. "I mean," Daniel continued, "we need to create a system that evolves with each student's journey. We need EduPath to be like a personal mentor, one that understands a student's weaknesses and strengths, not just at one point in time, but as they grow." Mike nodded, the wheels already turning in his head. "So, you're thinking of adding more long-term tracking? Something that doesn't just evaluate a student's progress, but also helps them develop over the years." "Exactly," Daniel replied. "EduPath shouldn't just be there for them today, but for every step of their academic career." In the weeks that followed, the team embarked on what would become their most ambitious project yet, creating a fully personalized, growth-oriented learning path for each student. The goal was to allow EduPath to understand where each student was, where they needed to go, and how they could get there in the most efficient and engaging way. It was a massive undertaking. They needed to revamp the AI algorithms that powered the platform, allowing them to track a student's progress over a much longer period. They also had to find ways to make the platform feel less like a tool and more like an interactive mentor, offering guidance, challenges, and motivational feedback. And of course, they had to make sure that teachers could still easily access the data they needed to support their students without becoming overwhelmed by an influx of information. As the team dove into this new phase of development, Daniel felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. There were days when the challenges seemed insurmountable, but each small breakthrough kept them moving forward. He and Sarah worked late into the night refining algorithms. Mike consulted with teachers and administrators to make sure the platform was intuitive. Even the interns pitched in, offering fresh ideas and new perspectives that sometimes proved to be exactly what they needed. And then, after weeks of hard work, they reached a major milestone. The first iteration of the growth-oriented, personalized learning path was ready for beta testing. They rolled out the new feature to a small group of schools, eager to see how it would perform in real-world classrooms. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Teachers marveled at how the platform gave them more insight into their students' long-term growth, rather than just their current performance. Students, too, began to engage more deeply, motivated by the personalized feedback and challenges that encouraged them to push past their comfort zones. One particular story stood out to Daniel. It came from a high school in a small rural town, one that had been struggling with low graduation rates and disengaged students. One of the students, a senior named Ethan, had been falling behind for years, often skipping classes and failing to meet minimum requirements. But after using EduPath for just a few months, something changed. Ethan began to show up to class regularly, his assignments became more thoughtful, and he started to take ownership of his learning. By the time the semester ended, he was not only on track to graduate, but his teachers reported that he had developed a newfound enthusiasm for learning. When Daniel read the report, he was stunned. It was clear that EduPath had made a real impact on Ethan's life, and the lives of many others like him. But what really struck him was the realization that EduPath wasn't just helping students who were already thriving. It was helping those who had been left behind by traditional education systems. Meanwhile, as the platform evolved, so did the attention EduPath was receiving. The media began to take notice again. Articles appeared in major tech publications, touting EduPath as the future of education. Investors who had previously hesitated were now eager to get involved, offering Daniel and his team more resources than they had ever imagined. But Daniel remained cautious. He knew that with growth came new responsibilities, and he wanted to ensure that EduPath stayed true to its mission of improving education for all students. And then, just when it seemed like everything was aligning perfectly, a call came and that would change everything once again. It was from Elon Musk. From Elon Musk. Subject: exciting opportunity. Daniel, I've been following EduPath's journey closely, and I'm impressed with the direction you're taking. Your personalized growth model is something I've been hoping to see in the education space for a while. I think this has the potential to go beyond traditional schooling. I'd like to meet and discuss a potential collaboration. Let's talk. Elon Musk wanted to collaborate with EduPath. For a moment, Daniel was speechless. He had admired Elon for so long, and now, the opportunity to work together was within reach. This was the breakthrough he had been waiting for, the chance to take EDU Path to new heights, with one of the most influential innovators of the 21st century backing him. But it also meant that Daniel had to make a choice. EDU Path was on the cusp of something extraordinary, but partnering with Elon Musk would require a level of commitment and risk that he hadn't fully considered. It was a crossroads. Have you ever faced a moment in your life where an unexpected opportunity appeared? What did you do with it? How did you make your decision? Share your thoughts in the comments. The offer from Elon Musk was a game changer. Daniel sat in his office, staring at the email for what felt like hours. It was hard to process. He had known that EDU Path was doing well, but this was something else entirely. This was the kind of opportunity that many entrepreneurs only dream about, an invitation to collaborate with one of the most influential and innovative minds of the century. Sarah, sensing Daniel's hesitation, walked into his office. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" she asked, sitting down across from him. Daniel nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to do, Sarah. This could be huge for EDU Path, but it also feels like we're at a crossroads. Partnering with someone like Elon, it's not just about scaling. It's about changing everything. The direction, the purpose. It's more than we've ever envisioned." Sarah leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. "I get it. It's a big step, but look at what you've already built. EDU Path has the potential to change the entire education system. And with someone like Elon in your corner, you could take it to places we never thought possible." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "I've always believed in what we're doing, but now I'm not sure if this is about staying true to our mission or becoming just another startup chasing the big bucks. I don't want to lose sight of why we started EDU Path in the first place." "Look," Sarah said, "I think you've already proven that you're not here for the fame or the money. EDU Path is built on a solid foundation. The core values, the mission, it's all in place. What Elon can bring is the chance to scale it, to reach more students and make a bigger impact." Daniel wasn't entirely convinced. I've always been wary of taking on investors, let alone someone like Elon. What if we lose control of the vision? What if we compromise on what really matters?" "I don't think you'd lose control, Daniel," Sarah reassured him. "But think about it. Working with Elon means you don't have to do this alone anymore. You'll have access to resources, expertise, and networks that could make EDU Path something far beyond what we could ever achieve on our own. You could actually make this vision a reality on a global scale." Daniel sat in silence for a moment, his mind racing. There were so many possibilities, but so many unknowns as well. The world of venture capital and high-profile partnerships was uncharted territory for him. He had always trusted his instincts, but this was a decision that felt like it could change the course of everything. Finally, he took a deep breath and typed a response to Elon. Subject: exciting opportunity. Elon, thank you for reaching out. I've been following your work for years, and it would be an honor to collaborate with you on something as important as education. EDU Path has always been driven by the mission to improve learning for every student, and the potential to scale that vision is something we are very excited about. I would love to meet and discuss the possibilities further. Let's set something up. Best regards, Daniel Kim. The moment he clicked send, Daniel felt a rush of both excitement and apprehension. He had just opened the door to something that could reshape EDU Path's future and his own. But the unknown still lingered. Would Elon's vision align with theirs? Would they be able to retain the company's integrity as it grew? Or would they be swept up in the demands of a much larger operation? The next few days were a blur of anticipation as Daniel waited for Elon's team to confirm a meeting. In the meantime, the pressure to continue refining EDU Path only grew. Schools were already implementing the personalized learning paths, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, but scaling up meant new challenges, technical hurdles, financial logistics, and, most importantly, maintaining the company culture as they expanded. As the days passed, Daniel couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. He had started EDU Path with a simple mission: to create a better education system. A system where students didn't just learn, they thrived. But now, that mission had taken on a life of its own. The reach of EDU Path had surpassed his expectations, and the impact it was having on students like Ethan, who had once felt left behind, was undeniable. Now, he had to decide if he wanted to take that mission even further. Finally, Elon's team reached out, and they arranged a meeting at SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California. It was an impressive location, sleek, modern, and full of cutting-edge technology. As Daniel stepped into the building, he was struck by the sheer scale of it all. This was the world of innovation at its highest level. Elon greeted him with his characteristic enthusiasm. "Daniel, good to finally meet you in person," he said, extending his hand. "I've been following EduPath's progress closely. You've really built something special." Daniel shook his hand, still in awe of the opportunity before him. "Thank you, Elon. It's an honor to be here. Your work has been a huge inspiration to me." Elon smiled. "Well, now you're inspiring others. What you've done with EduPath is incredible. I see a lot of potential in what you're building, and I think we can take it to a whole new level." Daniel listened intently as Elon laid out his vision. He spoke about the future of education, the need for innovative solutions to tackle global challenges, and how EduPath could be a part of that transformation. Elon offered his resources, his expertise, and his network, everything EduPath needed to scale rapidly. But as the conversation unfolded, Daniel couldn't ignore the feeling of caution that lingered. It wasn't the opportunity that scared him. It was the fear that, in the process of expanding, they might lose sight of the core mission, helping students, not just growing a company. Finally, Elon turned to him. "So, Daniel, what do you think? Are you ready to take EduPath to the next level?" Daniel paused, reflecting on everything that had brought him to this moment, the struggles, the victories, and the people who had believed in him. He thought of the students who were thriving thanks to EduPath and the future he envisioned for them. It was all within reach, but it was up to him to decide how far he was willing to go. Have you ever had to make a decision that could change the course of your life? How did you approach it? What factors did you consider? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. The meeting with Elon Musk had left Daniel in a whirlwind of thoughts. For days, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just reached a critical juncture. The path ahead was full of promise, but it was also fraught with uncertainty. Partnering with Elon could mean that EduPath would finally scale beyond what he had ever imagined. But it could also mean sacrificing some of the control he had fought so hard to maintain. As he walked back to his hotel that evening, Daniel's mind was racing. He knew what was at stake. EduPath had always been a dream, something personal and meaningful. The potential to revolutionize education was now right in front of him, but could he trust himself to navigate this new world of high-stakes partnerships? He thought back to his earlier days, when he first started working on EduPath as a passion project, driven by a vision to help students learn in ways that were meaningful to them. The idea of creating personalized learning paths wasn't just a business venture, it was a mission. And yet, he couldn't deny that the chance to work alongside Elon Musk could open doors to a level of impact he'd never been able to reach on his own. It was a lot to process, and he needed time. The next morning, after a restless night, Daniel found himself back at the office with his team. The email from Elon still sat in his inbox, a constant reminder of the decision he had to make. His team, as usual, was in full swing, refining features, answering support queries, and pushing forward with new implementations. But today, the energy in the room felt different. Sarah noticed the shift in Daniel's demeanor. She walked over to his desk and asked quietly, "You okay?" Daniel smiled faintly but didn't meet her eyes. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking a lot." She perched herself on the edge of his desk. "About Elon?" He nodded. "Yeah, I just keep wondering if I'm making the right decision. This could be the opportunity we've been waiting for, but I also don't want to lose what makes EduPath special." Sarah's face softened. "I get it, but remember why we started this. We wanted to make a difference in education. You've already proven that this can work on a small scale. With someone like Elon backing us, we could reach so many more students. Think about how many lives EduPath could change." Daniel looked at her, a sense of uncertainty still clouding his thoughts. What if, in scaling up, we lose the personal touch? What if EduPath becomes just another tech product instead of something that's truly impacting kids? "I don't think that will happen," Sarah reassured him. "You've always been focused on the mission, and that's not going to change. But with the resources Elon offers, You'll be able to build something that can help millions, not just a handful. You'll be able to make a real, lasting change. Daniel sat back, his eyes still fixed on the screen. He could hear the conviction in Sarah's voice, and part of him knew she was right. But another part of him, his inner voice, was still hesitant. He thought back to Ethan, the high school student who had turned his academic life around because of EDU Path. There were countless other stories like his. Stories of kids who had been written off, who had struggled in traditional classrooms but found a path to success with EDU Path's personalized approach. He wanted to give more students the same opportunity. Maybe the key wasn't choosing between growth and staying true to the mission. Maybe the key was finding a way to do both. That afternoon, Daniel made his decision. He called Elon's office and scheduled a follow-up meeting. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he was ready to take the leap. EDU Path had already changed lives, but now it was time to take it to the next level. He called a meeting with his core team, Sarah, Mike, and the others, and gathered them in the conference room. As they sat down, Daniel could see the anticipation in their eyes. They all knew what was at stake. But Daniel was determined to keep the vision intact. "I've made a decision," Daniel began, his voice steady. "We're going to move forward with the partnership with Elon. But here's the thing. Our mission stays the same. We're not just building a platform. We're changing the way kids learn. We're making education more personalized, more engaging, and more impactful." Mike leaned forward, his eyes wide. "You're serious about this?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, but I want to make sure we stay true to our roots. I've spent years building EDU Path, and I don't want it to turn into something unrecognizable. Elon believes in what we're doing, but we have to make sure we don't lose our soul in the process." Sarah smiled, relief washing over her. "I think that's exactly what Elon wants too. He's a visionary, but he knows when something is working. He's not here to change our mission. He's here to help us grow." Daniel felt a sense of clarity wash over him. The team was aligned, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was making the right call. EDU Path was bigger than any one person, and it had the potential to change the future of education. But that couldn't happen if they compromised their values. A few days later, Daniel flew to California to meet Elon in person again. This time, the conversation was different. Daniel came prepared, ready to discuss how they could collaborate without losing the essence of what EDU Path stood for. Elon was more than receptive. In fact, he was excited. "You've got a good thing here, Daniel," Elon said with a grin. "I'm not trying to change what you've built. I'm just offering you the resources to make it even bigger. Let's make it work, but let's keep the vision intact. You're the one who's been in the trenches. You know what works. I'll support you however I can." It was the confirmation Daniel needed. With Elon's backing, EDU Path would have the tools to reach a global audience, but the core values would remain in place. As they shook hands, Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't just a business decision. It was a leap of faith. But it was a leap he was willing to take. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to take a leap of faith? What factors helped you make that decision? What did you learn from it? Share your story in the comments. The weeks following Daniel's decision to partner with Elon Musk were a blur of activity. EDU Path, once a small startup with a big vision, was now on the fast track to becoming a global force in education technology. With Elon's backing, Daniel had access to resources that were previously unimaginable. The team expanded rapidly, bringing in experts from all corners of the tech world. New investors lined up, eager to be a part of what was now seen as a revolutionary approach to education. But with this growth came new challenges that Daniel hadn't anticipated when he first started EDU Path. Managing a rapidly expanding company wasn't just about building great products anymore. It was about creating a company culture that could sustain the mission and values they had started with. It was about keeping the personal touch that had made EDU Path so special while scaling it to meet the needs of millions. Daniel spent more time than ever on the phone with Elon and the team, strategizing about the future of EDU Path. They talked about global outreach, improving the technology behind the platform, and most importantly, how to ensure that EDU Path stayed focused on its mission of personalized education. Elon was always enthusiastic, but he also recognized the delicate balance that Daniel was trying to maintain. One afternoon, While Daniel was deep in a meeting about the next steps for EDU Path's expansion, Sarah walked into his office, her face lit up with excitement. "Daniel, we just got an invitation to present at the Global Education Summit in New York," she said, her voice filled with enthusiasm. Daniel looked up from his desk, surprised. "The Global Education Summit? That's a big deal, Sarah. It's where the biggest minds in education and technology come together." "I know," Sarah said, practically jumping up and down. "This is our chance to show the world what we've built, to really make an impact. We can present EDU Path's vision for the future of education and how we're making learning more personalized and accessible." Daniel felt a surge of pride. This was the kind of recognition EDU Path had been working toward. This was their moment to show that they weren't just another startup, but a company that could change the world. "We have to make sure we're ready," Daniel said, standing up from his desk. "This isn't just about the technology anymore. It's about showing the world what personalized education really means. Let's make this count." Over the next few weeks, the team worked around the clock to prepare for the summit. They revamped the EDU Path presentation, ensuring that it highlighted the platform's potential to reach millions of students and transform the way education was delivered. But more than that, they wanted to convey the heart of EDU Path, the belief that every student deserves a chance to thrive, regardless of their background or learning style. The day of the summit arrived, and Daniel found himself standing backstage, waiting for his turn to speak. The energy in the air was electric. Educators, technologists, and investors from around the world milled about, discussing the future of education. The stage was set for something big. As Daniel took his place in front of the crowd, he felt a moment of doubt. This wasn't just another pitch. This was about showing the world why EDU Path was different. He glanced at Sarah, who gave him a reassuring nod. She had been by his side from the beginning, and now they were about to take EDU Path to new heights. The lights dimmed, and Daniel stepped forward to the microphone. The audience fell silent, eager to hear what he had to say. "Good afternoon, everyone," Daniel began, his voice steady but filled with passion. "I'm Daniel Kim, the founder of EDU Path. Today, I'm here to share a vision for the future of education, a future where every student, no matter where they come from or how they learn, has the opportunity to succeed. A future where education is personalized to fit the needs of each individual, not the other way around." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. EDU Path started as a small project, an idea born from the belief that education should empower, not constrain. We wanted to create a platform that could adapt to each student's unique learning path. But as we've grown, we've realized that our mission is bigger than just one platform. It's about changing the entire education system. Daniel continued, sharing the story of EDU Path's humble beginnings and the students who had been transformed by the platform. He spoke about the technology behind the learning paths, the way EDU Path used data to create a personalized experience for each user. But he didn't just focus on the tech. He spoke from the heart, emphasizing the impact EDU Path was having on real students. "We've seen how personalized learning can unlock potential in students who were otherwise overlooked. We've seen the shy child who now speaks up in class, the student who once failed but is now thriving in their own way. This is the power of personalized education. And we believe it's the future of learning for millions of students around the world." The audience was captivated. There was a sense of urgency in the room, a recognition that EDU Path wasn't just another educational tool, but a movement. As Daniel spoke, he could see the nods of approval from educators and investors alike. This was what they had been waiting for, a solution that didn't just promise to improve education, but to change it fundamentally. When Daniel finished his presentation, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't just polite applause, it was a standing ovation. People were moved by the vision EDU Path presented, and they wanted to be a part of it. After the presentation, Daniel was swarmed by attendees eager to learn more. Investors were asking about funding opportunities, and educators were discussing how they could implement EDU Path in their own schools. Daniel felt a sense of exhilaration he had never experienced before. This was the beginning of something truly massive. Later that evening, as Daniel and Sarah walked out of the summit venue, Sarah couldn't stop smiling. "That was incredible, Daniel. You just changed the game." Daniel nodded, a sense of accomplishment settling in. We didn't just change the game. We showed the world that personalized education isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, and we're just getting started. What do you think is the future of education? How do you see personalized learning impacting students? Share your thoughts in the comments. The days following the Global Education Summit were a whirlwind of activity. Daniel had never experienced such a surge of interest in EduPath. Media outlets were reaching out for interviews, educators were contacting him about potential collaborations, and investors were eager to get involved. The momentum was undeniable. EduPath was officially on the map. But with all this excitement came a new set of challenges. Managing a growing company was no small feat. As EduPath's user base expanded, Daniel found himself faced with the task of ensuring that the platform could scale without losing the personalized touch that had made it so successful. There were technical challenges to overcome, partnerships to forge, and decisions to be made about the direction the company should take. One afternoon, while Daniel was reviewing new investor proposals, Sarah walked into his office, her face serious. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Daniel looked up from his laptop, sensing the gravity in her voice. "What's going on?" "We've got an issue," Sarah said, taking a seat across from him. "As much as we've grown, we're starting to hit some roadblocks. Our servers can't keep up with the demand. The user experience is starting to lag, and it's affecting our reviews. If we don't address this soon, we could lose users." Daniel rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the situation. This was the kind of problem they had feared. They had designed EduPath to be scalable, but they hadn't anticipated the kind of explosive growth they were experiencing. "We can't afford to lose users," Daniel said, his voice tight. EduPath has always been about providing a seamless experience for students. We can't let that slip." "I know," Sarah agreed. "We've been in talks with a few cloud service providers, but we'll need a substantial investment to upgrade our infrastructure. The good news is that Elon's team is willing to back us, but it'll take time to implement the changes." Daniel's mind was already racing. They couldn't afford to wait. If they lost users now, it could set them back months, maybe even years. But on the other hand, they couldn't compromise the quality of the product they had worked so hard to create. "I'll talk to Elon," Daniel said, standing up. "We need to move fast, but we need to make sure we don't lose sight of our values. This isn't just about throwing money at the problem. It's about making sure EduPath stays true to its mission." Later that day, Daniel found himself on a call with Elon Musk. The conversation was straightforward, but there was a sense of urgency in Daniel's voice. "Elon, we've got a situation," Daniel began. "EduPath is growing faster than we anticipated, and our current infrastructure isn't keeping up. We're seeing slowdowns, and if we don't address it soon, we risk losing users." Elon was silent for a moment, but Daniel could hear the gears turning in his head. "Sounds like a scalability issue. You're right to act fast. I can have my team work with you to scale up your servers, but it's going to require a significant investment. How soon do you need this done?" "Yesterday," Daniel replied. "Our users are already starting to notice. We can't afford to wait." "I'll get my team on it," Elon said. "But we also need to make sure that the user experience isn't compromised during the transition. We don't want to sacrifice quality for speed." Daniel nodded, feeling a wave of relief. "That's exactly what I'm concerned about. I don't want EduPath to become just another tech product. It has to remain personal and accessible. That's what makes it different." "We'll make sure of that," Elon assured him. "Keep me updated on the progress. I'm confident you'll work it out." With Elon's team on board, the technical overhaul began in earnest. For the next few weeks, Daniel and his team worked closely with the engineers to upgrade EduPath's infrastructure. It was a race against time. Every minute spent troubleshooting meant a potential loss in users. But despite the pressure, Daniel felt confident that they were doing the right thing. During this time, he also focused on another critical aspect of EduPath's future: the expansion into international markets. While the platform was already making waves in the US, there was a huge untapped market overseas. The idea of taking EduPath global was exciting, but it was also daunting. Every country had its own unique educational needs and challenges, and Daniel knew that they couldn't simply copy and paste the platform into different regions. He gathered his team and set up a series of strategy meetings to plan EduPath's international expansion. The first priority was understanding the specific needs of students in different countries. They had to tailor the platform to fit various curricula, languages, and cultural contexts. This wasn't going to be as simple as translating the platform. It was about adapting it to the educational systems of each region. We need to look at the unique challenges each country faces, Daniel said, addressing the team during one of their brainstorming sessions. In some places, students are struggling with access to basic technology, while in others, there's a push toward more advanced learning tools. Our platform needs to be flexible enough to work in both situations. Sarah nodded. We're going to need local partners in each country to help us understand the specific needs of their educational systems. We can't just rely on a one-size-fits-all approach. Exactly, Daniel agreed. But this is our chance to make a real global impact. If we can adapt EduPath to different markets, we could change the way education is delivered around the world. As the infrastructure upgrades continued and the international expansion plans took shape, Daniel couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what EduPath had become. The company had come a long way since its humble beginnings. But he also knew that this was just the beginning. EduPath was no longer just a platform, it was a movement. It had the potential to reshape the way the world viewed education, making it more personalized, more accessible, and more impactful. But it would take hard work, strategic thinking, and a relentless focus on their mission. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. But Daniel was more determined than ever to see it through. With Elon's support, a growing team, and a clear vision for the future, EduPath was poised to make its mark on the world. How do you think technology can be used to improve education on a global scale? What are some challenges you think EduPath might face as it expands internationally? Share your thoughts in the comments. The days grew long as Daniel and his team pushed forward with their international expansion. EduPath was already a recognized name in the United States, but the global market presented a new frontier. There were countries where access to education was limited, where technology was still emerging, and where cultures and languages differed dramatically. Daniel knew that EduPath could make a difference, but it wasn't going to be as easy as simply translating the platform. Daniel sat in a conference room, surrounded by his core team. They were meeting with local education experts from several different regions, each one offering insight into their country's educational system and the challenges they faced. Here's the thing, began Anna, a key member of the international strategy team. In developing nations, technology is still a barrier. We can't just assume that every student has a laptop or reliable internet. We need to think about accessibility first. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. I understand. We need to design EduPath to be adaptable, whether it's for students in remote villages with limited internet access or for those in highly urbanized areas with state-of-the-art technology. Across the table, Miguel, the team's lead data scientist, raised his hand. What's going to be really important is figuring out how to personalize the learning experience while working with minimal resources. We'll need to develop a system that's lightweight, yet still capable of delivering tailored learning paths. Sarah, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. I think we should focus on mobile access first. Almost everyone in these regions has a smartphone, even if they don't have a computer. If we can make EduPath fully functional on mobile devices, we can reach a much wider audience. Daniel smiled. That was exactly what he had been thinking. A mobile-first approach could be the key to breaking down the accessibility barriers. But there was still more to consider. Language was another challenge. Right, Daniel said. We'll also need to build out multiple language options. It's not just about translating the content, it's about adapting it so that the learning experience feels native to each culture. We don't want students to feel like they're getting a watered-down version of education. As the team brainstormed, Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. This was going to be an enormous undertaking, but he was more committed than ever to the vision of global education. EduPath had the potential to change the lives of millions of students around the world, and he wasn't about to let anything stand in the way. Meanwhile, back in the United States, EduPath's expansion was starting to attract attention from some of the biggest names in tech. A few weeks after the Global Education Summit, Daniel received an unexpected call from a well-known investor in Silicon Valley. Daniel, this is Jake Goldman, the voice on the other end said. I've been following EduPath's progress, and I'm impressed. I think you've got something really special here. I'd like to talk about potentially investing in the next phase of your growth. Daniel's heart raced. This was the kind of opportunity that could take EduPath to an entirely new level. Jake Goldman was a respected figure in the tech world, and his investment could open doors to even more resources and partnerships. But Daniel knew he had to be careful. Not every investor had EduPath's best interests at heart. Jake, I appreciate the interest, Daniel replied, his voice steady. But I want to make sure we're on the same page. EduPath is more than just a tech company. It's about making education accessible and personalized for every student. If you're on board with that vision, I'd love to talk. I'm definitely on board with the vision, Jake assured him. And I think I can help you scale EduPath faster than you ever imagined. Daniel felt a surge of excitement, but he also knew that expanding too quickly could create new problems. He needed to stay focused on EduPath's core mission. All right, let's talk. I want to make sure we're aligned on the values that drive this company. As the discussions with Jake continued, Daniel also kept his focus on the international market. The team had already begun piloting EduPath in several countries, testing the mobile-first version of the platform. Initial feedback was positive, but the real test would be in the long-term engagement. EduPath needed to prove that it wasn't just a tool for learning. It was a tool that could transform education no matter where in the world it was used. It wasn't long before the first international users began sending messages to the team. From remote schools in India to underserved communities in Africa, students were reporting back with stories of how EduPath was changing their educational experience. One email caught Daniel's attention in particular. It was from a teacher in a rural school in Kenya, a place where access to educational resources had been limited for years. The teacher wrote, "Dear EduPath team, I just wanted to let you know that our students are absolutely loving the platform. For the first time, they have the resources to learn at their own pace. I've seen a remarkable difference in their motivation. This is going to change lives here." Daniel felt a lump in his throat as he read the email. This was what it was all about. This was why he had started EduPath in the first place, to make education available to everyone, no matter their circumstances. But there was still so much work to do. There were more countries to reach, more students to serve, and more challenges to overcome. The road ahead was uncertain, but Daniel was more determined than ever to see EduPath's mission succeed. As he sat back in his chair that evening, Daniel reflected on the progress they had made and the road that still lay ahead. The challenges were real, but the impact was undeniable. EduPath was growing, and so was Daniel's sense of purpose. Together, we can change the world, he whispered to himself, the words echoing in his mind. What do you think is the most important factor in expanding a product globally? How do you think EduPath can maintain its values while scaling? Share your thoughts in the comments. EduPath was growing at a pace that was almost hard to fathom. What started as a small idea had now evolved into a platform with global ambitions. The feedback from international markets was overwhelmingly positive, but there were still huge hurdles to clear. Scaling the technology was just the beginning. Now, Daniel had to face the complexity of truly adapting EduPath to diverse educational systems, each with its own set of challenges. One of the biggest concerns was the different standards and curriculums around the world. While EduPath's personalized learning paths worked well in the United States, the platform needed to evolve to meet the varying educational demands of students in other countries. The global expansion was both an exciting and daunting task. Daniel stood in front of a whiteboard, scribbling down ideas. The team had gathered in the conference room for their weekly strategy meeting. Sarah was already seated at the table, reviewing the latest reports on user engagement. Anna was taking notes on a digital tablet, while Miguel was furiously typing away on his laptop. "We need to prioritize," Daniel said, addressing the team. "Our next step is figuring out how to make EduPath work within different curriculums. We're not just talking about language barriers. We're talking about completely different education structures." Anna nodded. "Right. In some countries, students follow a national curriculum, but in others, it's based on a more flexible model. We can't just offer a one-size-fits-all approach. We need to make EduPath adaptable to each system." Miguel raised his hand. I've been looking into ways we can implement a dynamic algorithm that adjusts content based on the user's location. That way, EduPath can deliver relevant material according to the specific curriculum they're following. Daniel smiled. That's exactly what we need. We'll create a global version of EduPath that can adjust the learning path depending on local requirements. But we can't just depend on algorithms. We need partnerships with local education boards and schools to truly understand their needs. It was a massive undertaking. The next few months would be filled with countless meetings with educational leaders, government officials, and local teachers. Daniel had come to realize that EduPath couldn't succeed without integrating deeply into the educational ecosystems of each country. A few days later, Daniel boarded a flight to India. The country was one of the largest potential markets for EduPath, but it also presented unique challenges. With a population of over 1 billion, India had an immense diversity of languages, cultures, and educational systems. But the government's push for digitizing education meant that EduPath could potentially have a huge impact. Daniel met with several local education experts during his trip, including an influential government official who had been spearheading India's education reform. The official, Rajesh, was skeptical at first. Education in India is complex, Rajesh explained as they sat in a sleek conference room. We have thousands of schools, and each state follows its own curriculum. Some schools are technologically advanced, while others barely have access to basic resources. I understand, Daniel said, but EduPath is designed to adapt to different needs. We're not just offering a generic solution. We want to work with local schools to understand their challenges and customize the platform to fit. Rajesh paused, considering Daniel's words. The idea of personalized learning is appealing, but you'll need to prove that EduPath can reach students in rural areas where internet access is limited. That's where the real impact will be. Daniel nodded. That's our goal. EduPath can work on low-bandwidth devices and even on basic smartphones. We want to create a solution that works everywhere, from the cities to the most remote villages. Rajesh was intrigued. If you can make that work, it would change the game for education here. The rest of the meeting focused on logistics, how EduPath could integrate with India's national education policy, how to build relationships with local schools, and how to handle the language barrier. EduPath would need to support multiple languages, including Hindi, Bengali, Tamil, and many others, and ensure the platform felt localized for each region. By the end of the meeting, Rajesh agreed to help facilitate connections with local education boards. Daniel knew this was a critical step, but there was still a lot of work ahead. The bureaucracy and red tape in India would require patience and persistence. Meanwhile, back at the office, the team had been working hard on refining EduPath's infrastructure to support its international expansion. The mobile-first design was now in place, and the next challenge was creating content that could be tailored to the specific needs of each region. This meant not only adjusting to different teaching styles, but also incorporating culturally relevant material. Sarah was on a call with the content team, discussing how to integrate localized lessons and examples. We can't just translate the curriculum. We need to localize it, Sarah said. For instance, in the U.S., a lesson on history might focus on the Civil War, but in South Africa, it might focus on apartheid. We need to make sure EduPath reflects the history and culture of each place. Daniel joined the call, listening intently. Exactly. It's not just about the language. It's about understanding the cultural context. And we need to make sure we're respecting local customs while still providing a world-class education. The conversation shifted to technical details. Miguel had been working on a new algorithm that would allow EduPath to deliver region-specific content without compromising the overall structure of the platform. The goal was to ensure that students would still benefit from the personalized learning experience that EduPath offered, no matter where they were in the world. The challenges were mounting, but Daniel felt more determined than ever. EduPath had come so far, and the potential to truly change the world was within reach. But the next phase would require a new level of coordination and collaboration, both within the company and with external partners. As the team worked tirelessly on the international rollout, Daniel kept reminding himself of why they had started this journey in the first place. To make education accessible for everyone, regardless of where they lived or what resources they had. He knew that the road ahead was still full of obstacles. There would be setbacks, long hours, and tough decisions to make. But Daniel also knew that the work they were doing would leave a lasting impact. They weren't just building a product, they were shaping the future of education itself. How do you think personalized education platforms like EduPath can make a difference in underserved regions of the world? What challenges do you think they will face, and how can those be overcome? Share your thoughts in the comments. The day after Daniel returned from India, the reality of the global expansion hit him like a ton of bricks. EduPath's vision of personalized education had the potential to impact millions, but turning that vision into a tangible reality for diverse countries required a careful balance between ambition and practicality. Daniel felt the weight of the responsibility, but at the same time, a sense of excitement surged within him. This was what he had been working for all along. As soon as he stepped into the office, he was met by Sarah, who was holding a set of detailed reports from the latest user engagement data. The numbers were promising, but the team needed to continue pushing forward. Daniel, we're seeing strong retention rates in countries where we've piloted the mobile version of EduPath, Sarah said, sitting down across from him. But the next big hurdle is content localization. The feedback we've received so far indicates that students love the platform, but they feel the content isn't always relevant to their cultural context. Daniel nodded. I anticipated that. The localized content is going to be key to making EduPath truly resonate with students. But it's more than just about history or literature. It's about aligning with their educational values and aspirations. At that moment, Miguel walked in with a cup of coffee in his hand and a few fresh ideas on his mind. I've been looking at the data too, he said, taking a seat next to Sarah. The algorithm we've developed for personalized learning is working great, but we still have room to improve when it comes to adjusting the pace for different cultural approaches to learning. Some countries are more exam-focused, while others emphasize collaborative, project-based learning. Daniel thought for a moment. Right. In some regions, passing exams is the most important thing, but in others, they value group learning and creativity. We'll need to develop a system that adapts to these differences while still maintaining the core personalized approach. The challenge was clear. EduPath had to evolve. The platform needed to not only adjust the learning materials, but also accommodate the different pedagogical methods that shaped students' learning experiences worldwide. As EduPath began to make strides internationally, Daniel received an email that caught his attention. It was from Elon Musk's office, the man who had been the catalyst for Daniel's vision years ago. Daniel had met Elon briefly during a conference when EduPath was just a fledgling startup, and the conversation had stuck with him. Now, Elon's team wanted to have a formal discussion about EduPath's future. Daniel, I've been following your journey with EduPath, and I'm impressed, the email read. We believe there's an opportunity to collaborate, especially in the area of scalable education technology. Would you be open to a meeting to explore possibilities? Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Collaborating with Elon Musk? The idea seemed surreal, but he couldn't deny the potential. Musk's ventures into space, AI, and sustainable energy were groundbreaking, and his involvement in education could open up unprecedented opportunities for EduPath. He immediately replied, confirming his interest in a meeting. It didn't take long for the arrangements to be made. A few days later, Daniel was sitting in a sleek conference room in Palo Alto, nervously awaiting the arrival of one of the world's most famous entrepreneurs. When Elon walked in, he didn't waste any time on pleasantries. His approach was direct and to the point, much like his reputation suggested. Daniel, he said, shaking his hand, I've been following your work with EduPath. The potential to scale education globally with technology is immense. But the real challenge is going to be overcoming the infrastructure and cultural hurdles. Daniel nodded, a little taken aback by how quickly the conversation had turned to the big issues. Exactly. It's not just about providing access to education. It's about making sure that it's the right kind of education. Every country is different, and every student has unique needs. Elon leaned back in his chair, his eyes focused. I know a thing or two about scaling global technologies. What I see in EduPath is the opportunity to disrupt the entire education system. But you need more than just a platform. You need partnerships, resources, and infrastructure to make it work on a massive scale. The right partnerships with governments, with schools, and with the private sector are critical. Daniel took a deep breath. This was it, the kind of advice and insight he had been hoping for. I agree. That's why I've been focusing on building relationships with local education leaders in each country we're targeting. But it's a slow process. Slow is fine, as long as it's moving forward, Elon replied. You're on the right track. But here's my proposal. I'd like to help you accelerate that process. I have the resources, the networks, and the infrastructure that can push EduPath into a new realm of possibilities. Whether it's partnerships with governments or using SpaceX's satellite technology to provide internet access to remote areas, I can help make it happen. Daniel could hardly believe what he was hearing. Elon Musk was offering to use his vast resources and influence to help scale EduPath. The implications were enormous. With Musk's support, EduPath could overcome many of the challenges that had once seemed insurmountable. Of course, Daniel said, trying to remain calm. I'd love to hear more about how you envision this collaboration working. Elon smiled. Let's start with infrastructure. There are parts of the world where simply getting a reliable internet connection is the biggest barrier. With Starlink, we can provide internet to even the most remote places. That's step one. Step two is building out a global network of education leaders who understand the local needs and can help us customize the content. I'll help you get those connections. Daniel's mind was racing with the possibilities. With Elon's help, EduPath could finally reach the furthest corners of the globe. But there were still challenges to consider: logistical, political, and financial. Daniel would need to tread carefully and ensure that the company's mission remained intact. After the meeting, Daniel walked out of the conference room feeling both elated and overwhelmed. He had just received an offer that could change the entire trajectory of EduPath's global expansion. But it was also a huge responsibility. The road ahead would be complicated. The infrastructure needed to deliver EduPath to every corner of the world was enormous. And with Elon Musk's involvement, the stakes were even higher. Daniel would need to balance the dream of global education with the practicalities of scaling a tech-driven company in a way that respected each country's educational values. But one thing was certain: with Elon Musk's support, EduPath had the potential to make an even bigger impact than Daniel had ever imagined. How do you think Elon Musk's involvement in EduPath could help accelerate global education? What are some potential challenges that come with collaborating with someone of his stature? Share your thoughts in the comments. The weeks following Daniel's meeting with Elon Musk were a whirlwind of activity. The excitement from the potential partnership had the entire EduPath team buzzing with energy. It wasn't every day that a startup founder got the chance to sit down with one of the most influential figures in technology. And now, with Elon offering to help scale EduPath, the team knew they were on the precipice of something truly transformative. However, as Daniel began to lay out the logistics of this new partnership, he realized the weight of what lay ahead. Elon's offer wasn't just about financial backing or infrastructure support. It was about redefining what EduPath could become on a global scale. The ambition was colossal, but so were the risks. Elon had made it clear that he wanted to leverage his vast resources to make EduPath a household name. From using SpaceX's satellite network to provide internet access in remote areas, to connecting with key political and business leaders around the world, Elon's network could help propel EduPath forward faster than Daniel had ever imagined. But these new partnerships and ventures required careful planning, and Daniel needed to ensure that the platform didn't lose its core mission in the process. He spent hours meeting with his leadership team to develop a clear roadmap for EduPath's international expansion, taking into account the potential collaboration with Elon Musk. The first priority was securing reliable internet access in the regions with the most need. The second was building a network of local partners who could help adapt EduPath's technology to fit the unique needs of their country's education systems. Sarah and Miguel were working tirelessly on refining the platform's tech to make it ready for a much larger global rollout. The biggest challenge was ensuring that EduPath's infrastructure could handle millions of new users without slowing down. They had already made significant strides in making EduPath mobile first, but now they had to prepare it for the vast scale that Elon's support would bring. We're going to need a serious boost in our server capacity, Miguel said, glancing at a series of performance tests. Once we expand globally, we'll need to ensure that the platform can handle thousands of simultaneous logins from all over the world. with no delay in loading times. Daniel knew that this was just one piece of the puzzle. That's where we'll need Elon's help with SpaceX's Starlink network. If we can offer fast, reliable internet in underserved areas, EduPath's reach could extend even further than we ever expected. Anna, who had been busy coordinating with educational leaders from various countries, chimed in. I've been speaking with several government officials, and they're interested in the potential benefits. But we need to make sure that EduPath is fully aligned with the local educational standards. Some governments have very strict guidelines about the types of content that can be used in schools. That's something we need to prioritize, Daniel agreed. We can't afford to be perceived as an outsider pushing our own agenda. We have to show that we understand and respect local educational values while still pushing for progress. One of the first countries that EduPath targeted for this international expansion was Brazil. With its large population and growing demand for technology-driven education, Brazil was an ideal candidate for the platform. However, Daniel soon learned that the country's education system was both diverse and fragmented, with a significant disparity between urban and rural schools. Anna, who had been spearheading international outreach, had arranged a meeting with Maria, a key figure in Brazil's Ministry of Education. Maria was intrigued by EduPath's potential, but had a series of concerns. Brazil's education system is deeply rooted in tradition, but it's also facing major challenges, Maria explained. We have a large gap in the quality of education between the cities and rural areas. In some regions, internet access is still unreliable, and students struggle with outdated materials. Daniel listened closely, understanding the challenges. That's exactly why EduPath's mobile-first approach could be a game-changer. We can make the platform accessible on low-bandwidth connections, and with Elon's support, we could ensure that students in remote areas have access to the content they need. Maria's eyes narrowed as she considered this. But we also need to ensure that EduPath is culturally relevant. Brazil is not just one unified system. Each state has its own educational needs, especially in the northern and rural regions. Anna, who had been taking notes, spoke up. We've been working on adapting the content to fit different cultural contexts. We're prepared to collaborate with local experts to make sure the platform aligns with Brazil's diverse needs. Maria nodded, her skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. If you can prove that EduPath works for our students, from the favelas to the most remote villages, then you'll have a partner in the Brazilian government. But it's going to take time and trust. Back at the office, the EduPath team rallied together to strategize how to best launch the platform in Brazil. It was clear that their international expansion was going to be a delicate dance of balancing technology with cultural sensitivity. But they were also determined to prove that they could adapt EduPath to fit any environment, anywhere in the world. Daniel knew that securing government support was only the beginning. The real challenge was ensuring that EduPath could maintain its commitment to personalized education while working within the boundaries of each country's unique educational systems. There was a constant tension between scaling the technology and remaining true to EduPath's mission of making education accessible and tailored to individual students' needs. Elon's support was invaluable in terms of infrastructure and resources, but Daniel also knew that the company's core values had to remain at the center of everything they did. The platform had to be flexible enough to adapt to any country's needs without sacrificing the fundamental idea that every student deserved a path tailored to their strengths and weaknesses. Weeks turned into months, and EduPath began to roll out in Brazil. The team worked closely with local experts, educators, and government officials to refine the platform and ensure its relevance to Brazilian students. They were also able to partner with local schools in rural areas to pilot the program and gather feedback. As the first few classes began using EduPath in Brazil, the results were nothing short of encouraging. Students who had once struggled with a one-size-fits-all educational model were now thriving with personalized learning paths. The technology was bridging gaps in access, and the feedback from teachers and students was overwhelmingly positive. Daniel stood in front of a screen showing live data from Brazil. The number of students actively engaged with EduPath was rising, and the platform was showing great promise in rural areas where educational inequality had once seemed insurmountable. "Look at this," Daniel said, turning to the team. "We're making a real difference here. This is just the beginning." But deep down, Daniel knew that this success was only a small piece of a much larger puzzle. EduPath's mission was global, and the challenges ahead were even bigger than the ones they had already overcome. Yet, for the first time, Daniel felt certain that they were on the right path. How do you think personalized education can be adapted to meet the needs of students in different cultural contexts? What steps can be taken to ensure that education technology remains relevant and effective in diverse environments? Share your thoughts in the comments. EduPath's success in Brazil was a pivotal moment, but it was only the beginning of a much larger journey. With Elon Musk's backing, the team had the resources and infrastructure to continue scaling globally. However, the path forward was filled with challenges that no one could have predicted. While the platform had gained traction in Brazil, Daniel knew that the next hurdle was going to be even more complex. The next region on the horizon for EduPath's expansion was Africa, where education disparities were even more severe. Many African countries faced not only a lack of resources but also challenges in internet access and infrastructure. To truly make a difference, EduPath had to adapt its model to meet these specific needs. Daniel sat in a meeting room with Sarah, Miguel, and Anna, all of whom were reviewing the latest reports from Brazil. Despite the successes, there were still many lessons to be learned, especially as they prepared for the next phase of EduPath's global expansion. "I think we've made a huge impact in Brazil," Sarah said, scrolling through the latest data. "But we need to refine the content further to make it more region-specific. We're seeing great engagement in the urban areas, but the rural regions still need more attention." Daniel nodded. "That's the challenge we'll face everywhere we go. Our platform is still relatively new, and we need to understand the nuances of each country's educational system. It's not just about delivering content, it's about creating a learning experience that feels native to that country." Anna, who had been looking at the expansion plan for Africa, spoke up. "Africa is going to be an entirely different challenge. There's a massive digital divide, and many countries still face power and connectivity issues. But there's also a lot of potential. I've been in touch with some local education leaders, and they're excited about what EduPath can do. We just need to make sure the platform is scalable and works in low-bandwidth environments." Daniel's eyes lit up at the mention of Africa. This was a part of the world that had been overlooked by many educational initiatives, but it was also a place where the need for innovation was critical. EduPath could provide a solution to the educational challenges faced by millions of students. "We need to develop a low-bandwidth version of the platform, similar to what we did in Brazil," Daniel said. "And we'll have to work closely with governments to ensure that the content aligns with local educational standards." A few weeks later, Daniel and his team boarded a flight to Nairobi, Kenya, where they had scheduled meetings with key partners in the region. Kenya, with its rapidly developing tech ecosystem, seemed like a natural starting point for EduPath's African expansion. The country had a growing number of tech-savvy young people, but many schools still faced a severe shortage of resources and infrastructure. Daniel and Anna were greeted at the airport by a local partner, James, who had been working on the ground to help bring EduPath to schools in the area. James was enthusiastic about the potential impact of the platform, but he also had some concerns about how EduPath could function in an environment with unreliable internet access and outdated infrastructure. "We have an opportunity here, Daniel, but it won't be easy," James said as he led them to a conference room at a local tech hub. "The challenge is that many schools in Kenya don't have the infrastructure to support digital learning at scale. But the demand for education is massive, and there's a real willingness to adopt new technologies. We just need to figure out how to make EduPath work in this context." Daniel listened intently as James outlined the major challenges. The first hurdle was the lack of electricity in many rural schools, where power cuts were frequent. The second was the lack of reliable internet connections, which often made it impossible for students to access online learning platforms. But despite these challenges, James was confident that EduPath could succeed in Kenya if they could develop a solution tailored to the region's specific needs. The team spent the next few days meeting with local education leaders, government officials, and school administrators. The more they learned about the education landscape in Kenya, the more they realized that there was an urgent need for change. Despite the challenges, there was a growing movement within the country to embrace technology as a tool for learning. The government is already on board with the idea of expanding digital education, said Emily, a government representative who had been advocating for technological integration in schools. But we're limited by the infrastructure. We need solutions that are adaptable and can function offline or with minimal connectivity. Daniel saw this as an opportunity. EduPath had already built a mobile-first platform, but now they needed to push the boundaries of what that meant. They would need to create a version of the platform that could function offline, with content that could be downloaded and accessed without a constant internet connection. This would allow students in remote areas to learn without being dependent on unreliable infrastructure. Back in the office, Sarah and Miguel dove into the technical details of creating an offline version of EduPath. It wasn't easy, but they knew it was necessary if they were going to meet the unique needs of the African market. The team worked around the clock to develop an innovative solution that would allow students to download lessons and resources on their mobile devices, which could then be accessed without the need for a stable internet connection. We're going to have to prioritize content in a way we've never done before, Sarah explained during a team meeting. The platform needs to have downloadable content that works in offline environments, but we also need to make sure the content remains updated and dynamic. Miguel was focused on ensuring that the content was lightweight and could be accessed even on low-end smartphones. We're going to have to rework the app's architecture so that it doesn't rely on continuous data streams. The goal is for students to download a series of lessons, and then they can access them whenever they have time, even if they're offline. Daniel was impressed with the team's progress. The ability to deliver content offline was a game changer, and it would make EduPath more adaptable to regions with unreliable infrastructure. But he also knew that this was just the beginning. They would need to continue adapting and improving as they rolled out in more countries. The next step was to test the new offline version of EduPath with a select group of students in rural Kenya. The team worked with local schools to distribute mobile devices preloaded with EduPath's curriculum, allowing students to experience the platform firsthand. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Students who had once been cut off from the digital revolution now had access to high-quality education, and the impact was immediate. One of the students, a young girl named Amina, shared her experience with Daniel during a school visit. Before EduPath, I could never keep up with my lessons. But now, I can learn at my own pace. It's like having a teacher right in my pocket. Daniel smiled, realizing that the work they were doing wasn't just about technology. It was about transforming lives. EduPath wasn't just a platform. It was a tool that could help students in even the most remote parts of the world break the cycle of poverty and build a better future. What do you think are the most important factors to consider when adapting educational technology for underserved regions like rural Africa? How can tech companies better serve these communities to ensure equal access to quality education? Share your thoughts in the comments. As EduPath's expansion continued in Africa, Daniel and his team were faced with an overwhelming sense of responsibility. They had cracked the code for delivering offline education in rural areas, but they knew that the real work was just beginning. Kenya had been a success, but they had set their sights on other countries in Africa, each with its own set of challenges. Daniel stood on the balcony of their new office in Nairobi, looking out at the sprawling city below. The buzz of progress was everywhere. New tech startups, growing communities of young entrepreneurs, and a rapidly evolving infrastructure. Kenya was poised to become a tech hub for Africa, and EduPath was going to be part of that transformation. But the future was uncertain. As the team prepared for further expansion into countries like Nigeria, Uganda, and South Africa, Daniel knew they had to stay grounded. Each new country brought its own unique set of circumstances. Some had better access to the internet, while others still struggled with basic infrastructure. EduPath's mission was clear. No matter the challenge, they had to find a way to make education accessible to all. The team gathered for a video conference call with Elon Musk, whose continued support had been vital to their success. Elon had recently visited a few countries in Africa and was eager to help expand EduPath's reach, especially through the infrastructure provided by SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet service. His team had been working to make internet access available in even the most remote parts of the continent, and it was becoming clear that this partnership could be the key to EduPath's success. "We've made great strides, Daniel," Elon said, his voice coming through clearly on the screen, "but we need to push harder. The demand for quality education is growing, and if we're going to scale rapidly, we need to ensure that every student has reliable internet access. Starlink can make that happen, but we have to move quickly. Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of the challenge. I agree, Elon. But the infrastructure isn't the only issue. We need to make sure EduPath is culturally relevant in every region we expand to. Each country has its own educational system, its own challenges, and its own expectations. We can't just provide a one-size-fits-all solution. Elon leaned back in his chair, thinking, "You're right. The content needs to be adaptable, and we should focus on training local educators, not just providing technology. We don't want to replace teachers. We want to empower them." Daniel smiled, knowing that Elon's vision aligned perfectly with EduPath's mission. Exactly. EduPath is all about empowering students and teachers. We're not just giving students a digital textbook. We're giving them tools to learn in a way that suits them best. As the weeks went by, Daniel's team worked closely with local educational experts in Nigeria and South Africa, focusing on building partnerships with schools, governments, and nonprofits. They spent time understanding local needs and challenges, which varied significantly from one country to another. In Nigeria, the team faced issues of internet censorship and regional disparities in education, while in South Africa, the challenge was largely about ensuring equitable access to digital tools for underserved communities. Anna had taken the lead in coordinating these efforts, building relationships with key government figures and school administrators in both countries. She was particularly excited about the potential impact of EduPath in South Africa, where the gap in educational achievement between urban and rural areas was vast. "We've got a real opportunity here," Anna said during a meeting with Daniel. In South Africa, many schools have limited access to resources, and those that do have technology often struggle to make the most of it. EduPath could be a game changer. Daniel agreed. We'll need to make sure the platform is flexible enough to handle different curricula across these regions. And it's crucial that we provide enough support for teachers to integrate EduPath effectively into their classrooms. While the team worked on refining the technology and localizing content, the political climate in several African countries began to shift. Governments were growing increasingly aware of the importance of technology in education and were eager to embrace digital solutions, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, which had exacerbated the disparities in access to quality education. But these changes weren't without their challenges. In some countries, like Nigeria, where there was a higher level of internet censorship and restrictions on online content, EduPath needed to navigate local regulations carefully. The team had to collaborate with legal experts to ensure that they complied with all necessary laws while still providing the educational resources needed. Daniel often found himself in tense meetings with local government officials, trying to balance EduPath's mission of providing free and open education with the legal constraints imposed by local governments. Despite these challenges, Daniel remained optimistic. The team was strong, and the mission was clear: to provide quality education to every student, no matter where they were in the world. Meanwhile, in the office back in Nairobi, Sarah and Miguel were working on the next phase of EduPath's tech rollout. They had received feedback from the first batch of users in Kenya, and the results were promising. Students who had once struggled in traditional classrooms were now showing signs of increased engagement and academic improvement. "I think we've got something special here," Miguel said, looking over the latest data. "The offline feature is a game changer, but we need to make sure the content keeps evolving. Education isn't static. It needs to grow with the students." Sarah agreed. "I've been working on some new features for the platform. Things like real-time assessment tools that give teachers more insights into student progress. If we can integrate this with the offline mode, it will be a huge advantage for schools that don't have constant internet access." Daniel walked into the room, his mind racing with the possibilities. Let's keep pushing the boundaries. The tech is just one part of the equation. The real value is in how we use it to empower teachers and students. One of the most exciting developments came when Elon proposed an initiative to fund the creation of solar-powered learning centers in some of the most underserved areas of Africa. These solar-powered hubs would serve as central points for education, equipped with Starlink internet and EduPath's offline platform, ensuring that students had access to the resources they needed, even if they didn't have electricity or reliable internet at home. This could be the tipping point, Elon said in one of their regular check-ins. If we can build these centers in key areas, we can give students in rural regions the chance to learn, connect, and grow. It could completely change the game for millions of kids. Daniel was inspired. This initiative would require a massive investment of resources, but it aligned perfectly with EduPath's mission to bring education to those who needed it most. With Elon's support and the team's dedication, Daniel felt confident that EduPath could continue to transform the educational landscape in Africa. What role do you think technology should play in bridging the educational gap in underserved regions? How can governments and private companies work together to provide sustainable solutions? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. As EduPath expanded its reach across Africa, it became evident that the platform was not just a technological solution. It was a catalyst for change. In countries like Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa, EduPath was helping students access quality education that they had previously been denied. But as the team looked to scale further, they knew that the real power of EduPath lay in the communities they were building around the platform. Daniel understood that the true potential of EduPath wasn't simply in the technology, it was in the relationships they fostered with teachers, parents, students, and local communities. By creating a network of support around EduPath, they could ensure its long-term success. The first step in building this community was through a series of teacher training programs. Daniel knew that, while EduPath's platform was revolutionary, it would be meaningless without the active involvement of educators. Teachers were the ones who would be on the front lines, guiding students through the lessons and ensuring they understood the material. In Nairobi, Sarah and Anna had already begun working on developing training materials for teachers. They designed an online course that would help educators understand how to integrate EduPath into their classrooms, even in areas with limited resources. The goal was to empower teachers with the skills and knowledge they needed to maximize the platform's impact. "We need to make this as simple as possible," Sarah said during a team meeting. "Teachers are busy, and many of them have never worked with technology like this before. So we need to create a user-friendly training system that doesn't overwhelm them." Anna nodded in agreement. "We can't just focus on the tech. We need to emphasize the pedagogy too. Teachers need to feel confident that EduPath will enhance their teaching methods, not replace them." In the months that followed, EduPath began holding regional workshops for teachers across Kenya. These workshops were not just about introducing the platform. They were about creating a network of educators who could share best practices and support one another. The team encouraged teachers to collaborate, ask questions, and give feedback about the platform. At one of these workshops, Daniel met teacher Esther, a passionate educator who had been teaching in a rural school for over a decade. Despite her school's limited resources, she had always tried to find creative ways to engage her students. When she was introduced to EduPath, she saw a new opportunity to make a lasting impact. "This is the tool we've been waiting for," teacher Esther said, her eyes lighting up as she explored EduPath's features. "With EduPath, I can reach students at their level, give them more personalized attention, and ensure they're learning the right things. It's not just about the tech, it's about helping me become a better teacher." The workshops grew in popularity, with more teachers from across Kenya traveling to attend. Many expressed excitement about the potential of EduPath to transform their classrooms, but there was also a sense of uncertainty. Teachers in rural areas, in particular, worried about whether they would have the necessary resources to make the most of the platform. To address this, Anna and Sarah worked on creating additional resources to support teachers in these regions. They developed offline training modules and instructional videos that could be downloaded onto mobile devices, so teachers in areas with limited internet access could still benefit from the training. "We need to give them the tools they need, even if they don't have consistent access to the internet," Sarah explained. "By making the training materials available offline, we can ensure that no teacher is left behind." As the workshops continued, the sense of community among the educators grew. They began sharing their success stories with one another, how they had used EduPath to engage students in new ways, how they had adapted the content to fit their students' needs, and how they had overcome obstacles in their classrooms. One teacher, George from a remote village in western Kenya, shared how he had been able to reach his students in ways he never thought possible. "At first, I didn't think EduPath would work for my class," George said during a teacher forum. But then I started using the platform with my students, and I saw a huge improvement in their engagement. It's like they finally found a way to connect with the material. This sense of camaraderie was exactly what Daniel had hoped for. By fostering a community of teachers who supported one another, EduPath was becoming more than just a platform. It was becoming a movement. Educators weren't just adopting new technology. They were becoming advocates for change, helping to transform education in their own communities. While the teacher community was growing stronger, Daniel also realized that engaging parents was a key part of the equation. In many parts of Africa, parents had little to no influence over their children's education, and many were unaware of the potential of technology in the classroom. But when they saw the positive impact EduPath was having on their children's learning, they began to take notice. EduPath launched a parent engagement initiative, which included informational sessions on how parents could support their children's learning through the platform. These sessions were held in schools and community centers, and were designed to educate parents about the role they could play in their children's education. One afternoon, Daniel attended a parent engagement session in a small town outside Nairobi. The room was filled with parents eager to learn how they could help their children succeed. As Daniel spoke about EduPath's features and the importance of fostering a growth mindset in students, he was surprised by how engaged the parents were. A father named Joseph stood up and asked, "How can we, as parents, ensure that our children are using this platform effectively? We want to help them, but we don't have the skills or knowledge." Daniel smiled. This was exactly why the Parent Engagement Initiative was so important. It's all about creating a partnership between parents, teachers, and students, Daniel explained. We provide the tools for learning, but it's up to you to encourage your children, to support them, and to create an environment where they feel motivated to learn. As EduPath's community grew, Daniel began to see how the platform was evolving from a tool for learning to a way of life. Students, teachers, and parents were all connected, working together to improve education. And it wasn't just in Kenya. As the platform spread to Nigeria, South Africa, and beyond, the same sense of community began to take root in each new country. Elon Musk's support had been instrumental in helping EduPath expand, but the platform's success was ultimately built on the strength of the relationships it had fostered. It was these relationships, among students, teachers, and parents, that would carry EduPath forward, ensuring that it continued to transform education for generations to come. How do you think building a strong community of educators, parents, and students can improve the effectiveness of educational technologies like EduPath? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. The sun set over Nairobi, casting a golden glow across the city. Daniel stood by the window in his office, reflecting on how far EduPath had come. It had been a long journey, one filled with challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But looking out over the bustling city, he saw a world of opportunity. EduPath wasn't just a business anymore. It was a movement, a force for good that had the power to change the future of education. The team had achieved what many had thought impossible. EduPath was now present in over 10 countries across Africa, with millions of students gaining access to quality education. From Kenya to Nigeria, South Africa to Uganda, communities were thriving, empowered by the platform's offline capabilities and its dedication to providing personalized, relevant education. In the months leading up to this moment, EduPath had grown rapidly. The technology had evolved, and the offline features had become even more robust. The platform now included adaptive learning tools, allowing students to progress at their own pace. There were built-in support systems for teachers, as well as a strong focus on localized content that reflected the cultures and curricula of each country. But perhaps the most significant development was the launch of the solar-powered learning hubs. With Elon Musk's support through SpaceX's Starlink, EduPath had successfully built several solar-powered centers in remote, underserved areas of Africa. These hubs not only provided students with internet access, but also became centers of community activity. Parents, teachers, and students all gathered there to learn, collaborate, and share ideas. Daniel remembered the day they opened the first hub in a small village outside of Nairobi. The excitement in the air was palpable. Parents had traveled miles to see the center, teachers eagerly discussed the potential for collaboration, and students rushed to connect with the world beyond their village. I never imagined something like this would come to our village, one parent had said, tears in her eyes as she spoke. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. The success of EDU Path wasn't just about the technology or the funding. It was about the people who had come together to make it happen. Daniel had built a team that was more like a family than a company. Sarah, Miguel, and Anna had all played crucial roles in refining the platform and making it accessible to the most remote parts of Africa. Elon's backing had given them the resources to reach even further, but it was the dedication of the team that had made it all possible. Anna had been instrumental in understanding the local challenges and creating partnerships with governments, schools, and nonprofits. Her tireless work had ensured that EDU Path was not just another foreign product but a solution tailored to the needs of the communities they served. Miguel had worked tirelessly on the technology, ensuring that it was scalable and adaptable. His ability to solve complex technical challenges had been the backbone of EDU Path's success. Sarah, with her passion for education, had led the teacher training initiatives. She had built a network of educators who shared best practices, supported each other, and empowered one another to make the most of the platform. But it was Daniel who had been the heart of it all. His vision for EDU Path had driven the team forward, and his belief in the power of education to change lives had kept them going through the toughest times. As the platform continued to expand, Daniel knew there was still much work to be done. EDU Path was growing, but there were still millions of students who needed access to quality education. And as they looked toward the future, there were new challenges on the horizon. Education in Africa and around the world was still facing many obstacles. From political instability to lack of resources, from outdated curricula to limited access to technology, there was no shortage of barriers that threatened to hold students back. But EDU Path had proven that with the right vision, the right technology, and the right community, these barriers could be overcome. And as EDU Path prepared for its next phase of expansion, Daniel was more determined than ever to see the mission through. The team was now looking beyond Africa to other underserved regions in Asia, Latin America, and beyond. The vision was clear: to provide every student, no matter where they lived, with access to the tools, resources, and opportunities they needed to succeed. Elon Musk had once said that the future belonged to those who could dream big and act boldly. Daniel had taken that to heart. EDU Path was more than just a platform. It was a movement to change the world, one student at a time. Months later, Daniel received a letter from the president of a small country in Southeast Asia. The letter was brief but powerful. Dear Mr. Daniel Matthews, I am writing to express my gratitude for the impact EDU Path has had on our education system. Thanks to your platform, we are seeing an increase in student performance across the board, especially in rural areas. The government is now looking into ways to integrate EDU Path into our national education policy. We believe that together, we can build a brighter future for our children. Sincerely, President Jaya Singhal. Daniel read the letter with a sense of pride. It was a testament to the hard work, dedication, and collaboration that had gone into creating EDU Path. They had come a long way, but they had only just begun. As he stood in his office, looking out over the horizon, Daniel reflected on the journey. There had been times of doubt, times when it seemed like the odds were insurmountable. But with each challenge they faced, the team had grown stronger, more resilient, and more committed to their mission. EDU Path had started with a simple goal: to make education accessible to every child, regardless of their circumstances. But as it grew, it became clear that the impact of EDU Path would be far greater than they had ever imagined. They weren't just changing education, they were changing lives. And with every student they reached, every teacher they empowered, and every community they touched, Daniel knew that EDU Path was leaving a lasting legacy. The future of education had arrived, and it was brighter than ever. What do you think is the most important factor in creating lasting change in education? Is it technology, teacher training, or community involvement? Share your thoughts with us in the comments.